All right. Well, I see 100. What a great number. So good evening, everyone. My name is Vig Krishnamurti. I'm Deputy Commissioner at Chicago Department of Transportation. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to those who are still coming in. We have a great agenda tonight, and I just want to acknowledge that Commissioner Biaggi is here with us tonight. And she wanted to give a few remarks. I'd like to do the same thing very briefly, and then really move to the discussion and the wonderful input that all of you can provide. So Commissioner Biaggi, thank you for being here, and take the floor, please.
Well, I think it's thank you and the team, but thank you to all of you who made time for this on a weeknight evening. We really appreciate everyone who came out to the last meeting and then who are coming here tonight. We all have a lot of obligations and places that we need to be, want to be. Things happen this time of day. So we appreciate you coming out. So if you weren't with us last, I promise to short. If you were with us last time, the Chicago Mobility Collaborative, and if you were here and came back, we appreciate that so much. And this is really our opportunity to kind of lift up our heads, look at the whole city, the whole system of what we're working on, get some feedback on what folks want to collaborate around together, and really think about how do we move forward on issues that I think everybody on this call wouldn't be here if they didn't care about things like making sure that biking and walking and moving around the city and public transit is safe, accessible, affordable, and adds to our quality of life everywhere. So we feel this, we're here with urgency. We feel this, we recognize that we've had fatalities and injuries on our roadways. That is top of mind for us. So everything we do is keeping top of mind that we need to move forward quickly as we can. But we move farther and faster when we do it together. And that's why we've invited you all here to do that. You'll hear some really great information about cycling and walking, the things that we're doing together. CTA is here talking about bus and transit. So I don't want to, bury the lead or at least give away the whole meeting here. I know Vic's going to get into that, but I just want to say how thankful and grateful we are to you for being here. Thank you to a new leadership group that you'll hear about. And I just look forward to listening in and helping us move the city forward together. So thank you. Thanks, Vig. Back to you.
All right. Well, as Commissioner said, I wanted to start with the collaborative. What is that? Well, it's an adjective that's trying to be a noun, but I think it's just simply an outlook that want to emphasize that through discussion and leaning into different viewpoints and approaches that we really can improve the way we work on those shared goals and build a bigger, better city. And I want to acknowledge that work happens in many ways. It happens here tonight, of course, but countless other meetings about individual projects. But perhaps even more notable than those meetings that have, CDOT in the corner of the slide are those things happening from the grassroots, like street openings in Belmont-Cragen, or organizing memorials for people impacted by traffic violence, or visioning for a mobility hub in North Lawndale that's not just an exchange for bikes, but a place to exchange stories and ideas and experiences of what it is to walk, bike, bus as a person of color, or groups like Grow Greater Inglewood, who their decades-long investment in the idea of the Inglewood Trail, not just as a trail, but as a catalyst for a whole green economy, have been able to help the city and really help the community attract the $20 million RAISE grant that the United States Department of Transportation has awarded to that project to help move it ahead. So tonight is one touch point among many in this movement about moving mobility forward. And we recognize that some may find tonight fulfilling and some may find tonight frustrating, and that this forum may not necessarily provide everything that everyone is seeking, but we really are trying to use your feedback. And thank you to the people, dozens and hundreds of people actually who filled out our survey, who wrote in, who called, who emailed to give us that feedback so we can make this as productive as possible. So this is the second meeting, and we hope that with each meeting, there's going to be change and improvement. Some of those concrete changes since last time is we've upped our capacity, and I want to introduce Romina Castillo. Many of you may know Romina, and she's been, not a new face to the mobility world, but she's joined the CDOT team as our Director of Engagement and Outreach. We've shifted the time to 6 tonight, trying this time out. We know that we got some feedback that 2 o'clock in the afternoon was a challenging time, so this may not be the best time for everyone, but we're going to try it and see how it works. The format, we heard there is definitely a desire for more discussion, more open-ended discussion and more time for that discussion. And so we're going to do that today. And then establishment of this leadership group, who we're really looking to those individuals and people who have helped be champions for the kind of change in our streets over years and decades, help shape this forum in a continued way, as well as provide some input into today's agenda and format. So thank you to them, and we'll introduce in a minute. And that agenda for today is, we're a big city and we have people coming from a lot of perspectives, but two things really ring clear. And that's why this work is important. And those are shared values for safety, equity, accessibility, sustainability, and all those values that guide us. And really the what. I think there's no dispute that the tools and techniques, be they, a median refuge island or a mobility ritual, are the techniques and tools that will advance this shared vision. But the discussion we hope to have is around how do we get there, the strategy. And just think of it like you're standing at the corner of State and Madison, and you want to get to Hyde Park. Do you hop on the Green Line or take number 6 bus? They're both going to get you there, but they each have their own strengths and advantages. Perhaps they complement each other, but work in different ways. So without further ado, is Ruth here? I'd love to introduce Ruth, who's been really a champion for mobility in the city of Chicago. Her affiliation with CLOC and Lurie Hospital, but also her work in communities around walkability assessments, have really helped a lot of things in the city. So Ruth is part of our leadership group, and I'll let her say a few remarks, and then thank you, Ruth, for being here and being part of the group.
One second, Ruth, we are getting you unmuted.
Awesome. Yeah, I was like, I can't mute myself. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Vig. Yeah, my name is Ruth. I work on community engagement at Lurie Children's Hospital. The program I work for is CLOC. I'm also a streets blog writer, and I'm part of the leadership team, and we're hoping to help CDOT kind of move this mobility collaborative forward with a few other people, civic organizations, and CBOs are part of the leadership group. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. This is David Smith from CDOT. Again, really want to thank everyone for coming out to the meeting today. We're going to get into the bulk of the meeting, which are these breakout groups and discussions. There's going to be 4 options for everyone to choose from. The first one will be focused in on the bicycle network. The second one will be focused on pedestrian experience. Third will be transit strategy. And then fourth, complete streets engagement. So everyone will be able to choose whatever room they want to go into. Each breakout group will start with a brief presentation to really level set and to get the conversation going. And then we'll open it up for a group discussion for most of the meeting. We're really hoping to facilitate conversation between everyone, including with us, but also between attendees. We really want to get that conversation going. So we'll help moderate the room once we get there. And the purpose of the breakout groups is really to help gain a better understanding of what's happening across the city within these different elements of our mobility system. For us at CDOT to hear what makes sense, what can be improved in terms of strategies. And we want to ultimately discuss how all of us, the public sector, the private sector, institutions, community organizations, advocates, residents, how we can all work together, build on all the incredible energy that's happening out on our streets, and make our city more accessible and safer for everyone. So with that, I think Aaron and Amanda will hit a couple of buttons, and everyone will get an option to choose which breakout group you prefer to go into. Thank you.
All right, I think we're good to go. Just an FYI for everyone, the session will be recorded, and the chat function should be available to anyone. So feel free to use the chat. We'll be monitoring that and saving that as well. And please use the raise your hand function as well if you've got any questions. But Jason is going to open up with CTA with a short presentation, and then we'll open it up to a broader discussion between everybody here. So Jason, if you want to kick it off.
Thanks, Kurt. My name is Jason Meter. I'm the Senior Manager of Traffic Planning at CTA. I'm going to give a quick overview of some of the transit mobility initiatives that we're working on and our strategies. And my colleague, Jen Henry, will also be jumping in to talk to some of the projects that we're doing. Jen, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Henry. I'm the Senior Manager for Strategic Planning focused on bus at CTA. And I'll talk about some of the longer term strategies. Jason's got the near term and medium term.
Thanks, Jen. So first of all, I want to say thanks for joining the transit breakout group. I was a little concerned that everybody would be filling up the other breakout sessions. So definitely excited to have some transit enthusiasts here tonight to join us for this. So that being said, guess I'll get right into it. I guess just to talk about our overall transit mobility strategy, public transit is a key element to the city's overall strategy, especially with respect to equity and sustainability goals. Design and management of the public right-of-way can directly impact the quality and experience of transit, especially bus service. And I mentioned bus right now because the focus of what we'll be going over is on the bus, not the rail so much. It's extremely important as well, but there's less, we could spend a whole nother discussion on that. And, when we're talking about the space in the public right of way, there's more we can work on with CDOT regarding the bus. And CTA and CDOT work together to try to continually improve the transit network. CTA buses are, a major user and stakeholder, when it comes to the streets of Chicago, but ultimately it's, CDOT's roads and jurisdiction that we're on. So it's a collaborative effort to, make any changes or improvements and get things done. So a lot of this work, as you may not be surprised, involves determining the balance of space allocation, given multiple modes and uses within the limited width that we have in our city. And it's not a one size fits all. Different corridors have different needs, community priorities, uses, and the type of treatments and improvements that we'd be targeting, vary based on the location and some site-specific conditions. Throughout everything that we do and try to address, safety is always a top priority for all modes, in any design that we're considering. So just a quick overview, we'll show some examples of bus priority projects that have already been built, most of them in the past few years, then some that are on the near horizon, and then longer term projects before we open it up to the floor for discussion. So a few existing examples you may or may not be familiar with. Jeffrey Jump is built in 2013, and it runs through the south side and then is a express bus on South Lakeshore before going downtown and utilizing Loop Link. So good segue to Loop Link, which is probably the one that most people are familiar with and is the most prominent going through the loop. We have, stations with more amenities than usual, the bus lanes, some queue jump signals. They function as bus boarding islands with separated bike lanes. So we'll talk a little bit more about those different things as we move on. But it's kind of an example of a lot of what's going on. And then there's TSP, which stands for Transit Signal Priority. That is when buses automatically talk to traffic signals and can turn the light green or short or extend the green light if they show up on one, so that the bus gets through as it's approaching the intersection, and increases speed and reliability. So that has been installed on Ashland between Cermak and 95th and Western from 79th to Howard, as well as some intersections on the Jeffrey Jump. So it's not something that you'll see or that's obvious, but it's happening and it's out there. So. And now bus priority zones. This is where there's, we look at very high ridership corridors that have specific pinch points where our data shows that there's consistently low speeds, bad reliability, or other problems which we think could be addressed by kind of, short segments of roadway treatments. And you'll hear me touch on BPZs kind of throughout this because it falls into both the already built and short and longer term categories. So we'll circle back to that. The example that you see here is on 79th Street over the Dan Ryan near the Red Line station, where we have some bus lanes and shared bus right turn lanes. And those were installed in 2019 in this particular case. So when we think about bus priority street treatments, we call it a toolbox of treatments. And, it's kind of, a list of items. It's not meant to be limiting, but just a resource to, when we look at the specific context and specific, issues that are going on with the opportunity to do a project, and they fall into three main categories. That would be bus stop treatments, bus-friendly streets, and bus-friendly intersections. A couple of examples of stop treatments would be level or near level boarding. An example of that is at Loop Link. I believe the platforms are 10 or 11 inches high, which is higher than a standard 6-inch curb. So it makes it easier and faster for customers to get on the bus, especially those with limited mobility. Other bus stop treatments could be, a bus shelter for the elements, lighting, accessibility, as far as having a clear sidewalk space to, deploy a wheelchair ramp, or just for everybody to, have a clear path to get on the bus. We look at driveway conflicts, if we can either relocate the bus stop or remove the driveway if it's abandoned. So there's a focus at the stops. Then there's bus-friendly streets, which is probably what, first comes to mind when you think about bus priority treatments on the road. A couple of examples here are curbside bus lanes, but the bus lane doesn't necessarily have to be on the curb. It could be, parking on the curb and then in what we call an offset bus lane. It could be center running, which we don't have any in Chicago, but that doesn't mean, it is never an option. And then on the right, you can see an example of a bus boarding island. Where there's space to do so. These are especially effective where there's bike lanes and bus service, because at the bus stop, it eliminates the conflict where buses has to weave to the curb across a bike lane. So it's increases safety, and then also has the benefit where a bus doesn't have to wait to merge back into traffic and wait for a gap. It's stopping in the flow of lane where it can just continue forward. So increased safety for cyclists, buses, and improved bus operations. So, it's kind of a win for multiple modes there. Some other tools that we have would be a bus stop bump out, also referred to as bus bulbs. They function similarly to the boarding island, except it would be in the absence of a bike lane or where there's not enough room to have a separated bike lane and a bus bulb. The big benefit of that is at intersections, it is kind of like a pedestrian bump out, if you will, that shortens the crossing distance, except it's just long enough that it covers the front and rear doors of the bus. So, the bus can stop there and then just pull forward without the delay of having to wait to merge back into traffic. And there's several other, treatments we could do on the roadways, but in the interest of time, I'll keep moving on. So then there's bus-friendly intersections. I had talked about transit signal priority earlier. Sometimes that's done, or most of the time in Chicago, it's done just as a standalone treatment where the general traffic will get the green light with the bus. In a few instances, the bus has its own space where transit signal priority actually activates a queue jump signal, which kind of brings me to queue jump, the other example shown here, which if you can kind of, picture it looking at the diagram, if a bus has its own lane and pulls up to an intersection on a red light, the queue jump signal will, it's actually like a white vertical bar that means go to the bus. It's not green just to avoid confusion with general traffic, but it allows the bus to get through the intersection before the rest of the cars waiting at the red light. So just like the name implies, it's jumping the queue of cars and therefore prioritizing the bus service. Other tools at intersections that help traffic in general can be useful as buses as well, if it's a movement that they're making, just traffic signal coordination and optimized timing and, adding a left turn signal, things like that. So we're always working to improve that on bus corridors. So, that was just some examples of what we have been doing. Now, here are some on the near-term horizon. Underway currently, you might have seen our tactile signs, which is the blue bus stop sign shown on your screen. It's hard to tell from the picture, but the bus stop lettering is raised and there's Braille underneath that as well. These are at a height that a visually impaired person would easily be able to detect. And it was being installed as part of a pilot at over 1,300 bus stops at the initial rollout. Right now on Route 20 Madison and 157, which I forgot the name of the route, it goes down Ogden and up into the loop. Those two routes are complete with rollout on 7 more routes anticipated by early 2023. At that point, we'll, if we get some feedback, from the community and internally as well, and if it's positive, that could open the door for seeking additional grant funding or seeking next steps to continue to deploy the tactile signs. Another example of accessibility improvements that we're doing at bus stops is bus sidewalk pads. As you can see in the picture, previously this was a bus stop that it just let people on and off into the grass. That's not a very workable situation for people in a wheelchair or mobility challenged, or for anybody that doesn't want to step off the bus into a pit of mud. So we've been working with the city to install these. We've ranked them it's by neighborhoods with the highest needs, for equity reasons, and then looked at inaccessible bus stops that didn't have a sidewalk pad and kind of ranked them based on ridership so that we could, target these and, continually to, serve the most people, more and more. So this is a continually rolling out program. With the current rollout, we're targeting over 100 of them in the city, and I think some of that will spill into next spring, but we've gotten more than half of that done already at this point, I believe, for this batch of rollout. All right, so now back to bus priority zones for the short-term look ahead. There's 3 that'll be installed either this fall or next spring, depending on just labor and availability of materials. But so on the short-term horizon, 79th at Columbus and Kedzie, this one's already under construction. This has a couple of blocks of bus lanes. It includes a queue jump signal, bus stop improvements. There's a metro station right there, so it includes better connection to that. There was at a 6-point intersection, there was a 7th leg that kind of dumped into the middle of it. So that's being turned into a cul-de-sac for to improve the safety all around and provide a better bus boarding space. So that's one that we're glad to see moving forward. On Western Avenue from Logan to George, and George is roughly near Diversey. There's going to be curbside peak hour bus lanes. If you guys have seen what we've done on Chicago Avenue through River North or near the Blue Line, it'll be similar to that. And we also have a similar treatment on Western near the Blue Line that was done in 2019. And then Chicago from Western to Ashland is going to get offset bus lanes. There were some piloted through the pandemic, and this segment with support of the ward and the community is going to get this new offset treatment. And that's kind of what the diagram at the bottom shows. I know it's hard to tell what's going on, but basically we say offset because the cars and parked cars still get to be along the curb where they've always been. It's just that one of the 2 through lanes will be marked for bus and bike only. So this is we're glad to see that moving forward as well to make that segment more permanent for bus improvements. And then, as I mentioned before, bus boarding islands. These will continue to be implemented around the city. We have this is an example that was done this past summer on Jackson Boulevard through Columbus Park on the west side. You can see before was overbuilt for traffic. You know, 2 lanes each direction. There was a problem with speeding here. It's in a park, lots of children around. In the after picture, you can see, you know, there's the this bus boarding island served multiple purposes and kind of, you know, shows how all users can benefit from some improvements. The bike lane has been installed. It's separated from the traffic. The bus doesn't need to merge across it. The bus bulb serves as a refuge for pedestrians crossing. They only have you know, 2 lanes of traffic to cross now instead of 4. And the bus can just pull forward after it has people get on and off, because it is it doesn't have to pull to the curb and wait to merge back over. So for pedestrians, cyclists, and buses alike, you know, this was a win all around. Also looking forward, either starting later this year or in the spring, on Laramie, we're getting creative with a hybrid bus bike lane. I got to give CDOT some credit here for you know, opening the door to this type of you know, innovative treatment. You know, in an ideal world, we'd have, you know, a separate lane for buses, for bikes, you know, boarding islands, and, you know, everybody would have their own space. But in reality, given limited width, there's times that we have to, you know, fit as much, you know, as we can within a small space while, you know, balancing the benefit to all users. So this hybrid idea, the bike lane, as you can see, actually will ramp up onto the bus bulb, if you will. There is a buffer space so that when people are getting on and off the bus, they won't be walking straight into the bike lane. But there wasn't the ample width for, you know, deploying a wheelchair ramp for ADA reasons. So we have this hybrid space marked by a crosswalk across the bulb. You know, bikes will yield to pedestrians per usual. And again, we're eliminating the conflict between buses and bikes. So it's a safety improvement, operational improvement for the bus not having to merge back in. And, you know, we're still maintaining the through sidewalk for pedestrians while giving, you know, bus riders a space to wait that's, you know, in addition to the sidewalk. So again, you know, it's a plus for multiple roadway users. And you can see it shortens the crossing distance for pedestrians as well. So getting into longer term projects, I'll start talking about bus priority zones again. This is the last bus priority zones slide, but we can get into it more later. So we received some grant funding that will expand the bus priority zone initiative, and we're looking to reach additional corridors and neighborhoods. As I mentioned before, it's really looking at spot treatments and improvements to you know, kind of unsnarl the bus at pinch points where we have lots of frequency and lots of ridership. You know, just like everything else, it's going to be a balance of you know, the space being allocated to different roadway users, but you know, we really think that there's a lot of places that have an opportunity for these targeted bus improvements that will really you know, move things along. So we're also working with CDOT on this hand in hand, looking for opportunities for cost savings to really stretch the limited funding that we have, looking at overlapping projects so that, you know, when it comes to construction, we can make the best use of resources. For example, if there's a road is going to be resurfaced anyway, that kind of gives us a blank slate of, you know, the pavement marking that'll go down. Under the resurfacing program, which is federally funded, there's opportunity for minor curb changes, you know, maybe a bump out or bus bulb, that kind of thing. So, you know, we're really looking to collaborate and make the most of our limited funding for that. So now I will take a break from talking and turn it over to my colleague Jen, who can speak to the Better Streets for Buses plan.
Hey, and just quickly, Jason, can you nod that my audio is okay right now? You can hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Guys, I only have a couple slides, so we're almost done. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat, so we'll get to those soon if we haven't through our presentation. So if you're not familiar, if you didn't hear of it, in the spring, we did a big public outreach campaign around creating a Better Streets for Buses plan that would be a plan that would establish a citywide framework to guide how CTA and CDOT utilize infrastructure to achieve faster and more reliable bus service going forward. and also improved access to bus stops and better bus stops. So there's a number of things that impact the bus experience that are sort of in CTA's control more or less, and don't have a lot to do with CDOT. And there's a, like the frequency of scheduling. And there's a lot that CDOT does that doesn't necessarily impact the bus directly. So this plan is really focused on the overlap, the sidewalks, streets, and signal infrastructure that can impact the bus ridership experience. Next slide, Jason. The plan is to have two main components. One is a street network that identifies where we would be prioritizing improvements. And then a toolbox of street treatments, which is sort of a menu of all of the different street treatments you can do that Jason actually summarized earlier in the presentation. So in April, we began our public outreach process. We had a couple of virtual public meetings in May, and ended the public comment period in June. We had a number of activities to try to get the word out. It was a challenging time because we had to do most of the planning during the pandemic. So we did lean heavily on virtual interaction, but we tried to supplement it with hard copy materials at libraries, through ward offices, and et cetera. So we wrapped that up in June. Over the summer, we've been compiling and reviewing and analyzing all of the feedback that we received. And we're just now sort of moving into the stakeholder discussions again to try to decide how we use that feedback to form and revise a final plan. We'll be doing another round of follow-up public outreach, but we haven't figured out the dates or times or places yet. So I don't have any of those to announce. And then the goal would be to finalize the plan in very early 2023. Next slide. And then I just really wanted to talk about electric buses too. It doesn't have as much relevance to the CDOT realm as some other things, but I know a lot of people are interested in it. So if you weren't aware, we did release a roadmap for electrification of the full fleet by 2040. Our fleet is around 1,800 buses, so it's no small undertaking. We put equity considerations at the forefront in terms of prioritizing which garages would go first, and that plan talks more in detail about that. Currently, we have 13 Proterra electric buses out in the service on the 66 route. We expect 10 more to be deployed by the end of the year. And we recently secured an additional federal grant to advance the electrification of the Chicago Avenue garage. Next slide. There are 3 en-route charging locations currently at Navy Pier, Chicago Austin bus turnaround, and at Midway. But the analysis that we did as part of Charging Forward to really see how we get to 100% concluded that the best approach to charging electric buses is to maximize charging at bus garages rather than having a lot of en-route locations. So we're anticipating a very limited number of additional en-route fast charge locations at certain key layover locations. So there won't be a lot of impact on the public right of way with respect to the electric buses. The goal is to keep our service, not disrupt our service and not disrupt the public right of way with charging stations. But there's also just more practical considerations about centralizing the charging at the garages. It just makes it easier to manage. I think that might be it. Do I have any more slides? Nope, that's it. So I guess, Kurt, are you sort of facilitating from this point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think I introduced myself in the beginning, but my name's Kurt Facknitz. I'm the design manager for the Complete Streets program at the City of Chicago. Wanted to kind of table set a little bit on starting off the conversation at the end of this presentation here. We will get through some questions on here, so I will talk a little bit about those, but really want to make sure that this is more than a question and answer session, but a real collaborative discussion. And so as we're talking about some of these things that we'll work through, and I can, again, facilitate that a little bit. Definitely want this to be a conversation and not just, Jason and Jen fielding these questions and giving answers, but really want a discussion about everyone in this group's thoughts, opinions, feelings about all these things that we're talking about, and the ways that we can sort of work together to get where we want to go in terms of improving safety, efficiency, comfort, availability of transit, and really making our streets work for all modes. So to that end, to get started, and again, I'll work through a lot of these questions, but one thing that I think popped up that's really important and kind of bleeds into a lot of the things that Jason and Jen were talking about is, why, oh, sorry, I think my chat jumped. Here we go.
All right,
So
I stopped sharing the questions just so we could, I'll see each other's faces for the discussion, but I can put them back up if needed.
No, all good. Good call. Yeah, just my notes popped the other way. So it was talking about parking, and not just parking, but travel lanes, sidewalk space, and bike lanes were not mentioned, but basically all of the trade-offs with installing either bus priority treatments or dedicated bus lanes. And so wanted to start there and open up the discussion on where people want to see bus lanes or these bus priority treatments where they're not seeing them, and talk about the whys and what the trade-offs are. So, talk about why removing or relocating parking on certain corridors is a challenge, or why eliminating travel lanes. I know someone mentioned Ashland Avenue BRT. What were the challenges there, and how how we can help move forward some of these treatments that a lot of people want to see, and what pushback might be for doing those sort of things. So I'll sort of open up the discussion and start there with talking about those trade-offs. And Jason and Jen, I don't know if you want to you have anything to say on those to start.
So I have seen some of the chat. I have not read all of it yet. There's a lot of enthusiasm for bus lanes and BRT, and I'm really appreciative of that, and I share it. I started at CTA right around the time that that the Ashland BRT project was in the public, up for public comment, public meetings. I was not in the role that I am right now, and I think we can get there, but the opposition was real, and some things have changed since then, but not everything. Right? There was a lot of real grassroots opposition to taking a lane of traffic and eliminating left turns. The proposal, if you're familiar with it, was for center running. It was not going to take any parking. But I think we do need to be able to explain the trade-offs and the benefits well, because there will continue to be resistance to changing the status quo, reallocating the space. So I don't know if that is really all that insightful. I can expand if people have more specific questions.
Alan, you've had your hand up if you want to go.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. I'm now in a wheelchair, so I cross the street with more trepidation. So one thing I think is important is bicyclists really respect pedestrians. I've almost been hit by bicyclists. But my real question is, how do you measure the success of the different techniques? You take traffic counts or whatever you do it before and after. And if you do, that's a good way to sell what you're trying to do. In other words, all my neighbors are opposed to Ashland BRT. I love ease of there. Because the benefit people bring up Cleveland, and then it was pointed out that in Cleveland they have adjacent streets that have a lot of capacity for cars to go. The other point is when Loop Link started, Blair Kamen wrote how he walked faster than the Loop Link bus went. And the answer was, well, the mirrors stick out. So it'd be nice to know if you ever tried something and decided really to give the benefit really impact the local community. Thank you. And a whole bunch of things I know.
So I can say we do in general, look at before and after bus speeds, bus reliability, things like that when we do these treatments. LoopLink predated my time starting at CTA, so I can't speak to that, savings in particular, but a lot of the bus priority treatments that we were talking about, like bus priority zone type items, were installed in 2019. So, as everybody knows, it's hard to do a apples to apples comparison before and after, when we started collecting the after data. We have done some, community surveys and outreach, both, to the public and internally with our bus operators. And just the presence of bus lanes, from a qualitative approach, has been, extremely well received, and people appreciate it and feel like their commute is getting better. With the I can speak to the bus priority zones, future looking project that we have. We're have a consultant on board, and a part of their scope is to collect existing data anywhere that these will be going in, and then do a post installation analysis, just so we have that before and after. Being that this is relatively wouldn't say new or small initiative, but if you think of the miles of streets in the city and how small a percentage actually have bus priority treatments on them now, we are learning as we go, and we may see that some treatments are more effective than others, and some scenarios might work better in different places than others. So we are continually trying to look for that before and after and learn from what we find.
And I'll just add LoopLink. The performance varies somewhat by time of day. It does better at some times of day than others. And I'm talking about a pre-pandemic analysis now. We have not refreshed it since the pandemic. A lot of the other comments in the chat I saw were about enforcement of bus lanes, right? And that is a key component of these projects being able to perform up to their projections, right? So, if you have a couple of cars blocking the bus lane, that can really mess with the trip, right? So that is a problem we need to solve for.
And also deliveries, you have a problem. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Alan.
So anybody else, just any thoughts on, I think this big question of the biggest obstacles to implementing more bus friendly infrastructure? The comment, Fabio, it looks like you had left it in the chat, of Chicago being behind other big cities on this. Do you have anything, I guess, any thoughts on that, or anything to expand, and would like, folks to talk about, some of the barriers, but also, how we can work together to bring down those barriers and find ways to install more bus friendly infrastructure.
You made it open to you.
Yeah, I can call on folks with their hands up. Jose, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. Just going off of the BRT, so what is the biggest obstacle today to getting BRT, and why is CDOT, seems like y'all are going all in on the bus zones, and that kind of seems like a half measure. So I'm just kind of curious to why not just go with BRT.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that, and Jason, I'll let you add to this as well too. I think when it comes to providing the largest benefit across the system, we've looked a lot at where the slowest zones, and when I say we, CTA, a lot of this, where the slowest zones for buses across the city, and for individual routes, what sections of the route, what intersections, and bus priority treatments on a variety of different routes, even though it's not a bus lane for an entire route, are a way to do high impact treatments that provide the most benefit with the least, we're able to spread around that cost, right? There are limited resources. And so able to spread that benefit across the network and also put those benefits where they're going to make the best positive impact. So that's a big part of the focus on these bus priority treatments, but that is not to say that that is to the detriment of thinking about larger route-wide bus lane treatments, which is a little bit of what that Better Streets for Buses plan is all about. So I don't know, Jason or Jen, if you got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with Kurt said, about allocating limited resources, but also, on the larger projects, it takes, buy-in from the entire community. And, there is very, vehement opposition to removing any parking, for instance, whether it's, paid parking or not, that's just as another layer of complication. But, there's a lot of community members and business owners that oppose it. Lots of elective officials that wouldn't be open to it in the beginning. So I think that is a challenge that we have. I think this meeting right now and what we're doing and discussing is a step in the right direction to kind of build that coalition of people that understand the value of reallocating some roadway space to different uses that are willing to try new things and push the envelope. And then, in my opinion, at the end, our city will be a better place for it, and it'll be a successful endeavor. So I don't know if that wasn't a specific answer, but I know there's a challenge that we face.
And I'll just add that the part of the idea with the Better Streets for Buses plan is to sort of take that first step in identifying some of the most important corridors. I think on Ashland, one of the issues, right, was it was just sort of all focused on that one corridor and not necessarily part of a bigger plan, right? So I'm hopeful that sort of having that framework to build off of will be helpful.
I'll keep working through those with who have their hands up, but if there is something that someone has to just jump in on that's relevant to the conversation we're having, feel free to jump in without raising your hand too. We can have a pretty open discussion. But next with hands up, I have Julia.
And thanks for the answering our questions, taking the time to do so on a Thursday night. I just wanted to plus one Mary's comment about if we could see some of those trade-offs or kind of decision points in terms of kind of that incremental approach versus corridor-wide solutions. My understanding is like the longer the bus lane, the better the time savings. Obviously, that is still corridor dependent, but I think in terms of the barriers and public opinion, especially, it's important to have kind of a proof of concept, right? Like an actual example of gold standard BRT to look to, which we don't really have in Chicago, right? Beyond the loop link. So I think, one project that's executed well, despite any pushback, could, I think, win over both riders and drivers if they're seeing less traffic because more people are choosing to take the bus because of that, the impact of a bigger footprint of the red carpet, right? So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I really appreciate the feedback, Julia, and that was actually something I'd already written down, was the comment from Mary on making those types of analyses public. And I'll say too that part of the CMC, part of this collaborative is about doing a better job of communicating those things, working together to do those things, and share all the information we have. So the people in the community, the people that these projects are all affecting, can also, feel confident in those, share that information, build support for these types of projects, so that they can be successful going forward, and we can do them quickly going forward, and have those high impact, high benefit projects.
Yeah, look forward to seeing that analysis whenever you're able to share it. And I think, the broader public probably won't notice a Q jump going in, but they would likely notice, right, like a larger infrastructure project. So I just think the incremental approach, while I'm sure that's super effective in targeted areas, in terms of winning over public opinion, a larger project might get at that more swiftly.
Yeah, Julia, I don't think we disagree on that. And looking for the next opportunity to do something that is more transformational and obvious, right? I think there are a lot of benefits to just the perception of, hey, we're prioritizing streets for buses. We want you to take them, right? Like we're giving them an advantage, right? Not to say that the actual speed and reliability performance data isn't important, right? It is, but I think the visual, I mean, in my mind, LoopLink did succeed in that. It did transform the streetscape of those streets downtown, at least on Washington and Madison. Bus priority zones, part of the approach there too is a little bit, I mean, it is coming out of the Ashland BRT experience, right? It is sort of socializing this concept of red paint on the streets a little bit. And so there is an incremental approach to that. And I think we're getting close to sort of trying to take the next step.
So I'll keep hitting folks that have their hands up, but there were a couple of questions in the chat, and I just wanted to, make sure we didn't miss these and acknowledge these. And a lot of this conversation is infrastructure based, but there have been, several questions about, bus schedules, inaccurate bus schedules, and that being a big issue for CTA riders right now. So I wanted to, give folks a chance to talk about that. And Jason and Jen, if you can, speak to that a little bit.
Right. So, I think a lot of people know that we have a challenge with personnel, bus operators, the rapid transit operators on the L. What CTA had been doing was just putting out as we could with the personnel that we had. Now, the way, I don't know the details of the union rules, things like that, but the way that it worked is that when there was vacant, vacancies for personnel, then those particular runs on the train or the bus would be canceled and not be able to go out. So you might have a couple in a row that didn't make the trip, for instance. So what has just been implemented recently is that the schedules have been reduced to accommodate the realistic amount of personnel that we have to operate the vehicles. So while that is slightly spacing out the scheduled headways, the goal is to reduce large gaps in service and have a more consistent and dependable ride. And I'll also note that the plan is to ramp back up to pre-pandemic service levels as people are hired. There's very concerted effort to fill these positions so that we can get back to the frequency that we intend to.
Yeah, and Julia and Kate, I saw your messages in the chat as well, and just wanted to acknowledge that because that's so much of a part of what we're doing here, is talking about what are the projects that we can rally around together, and build a coalition on and advocate for, and help not only guide the planning process and the project selection process, but also getting those projects across the finish line and to be the best they can be. So absolutely. Hugo, you've got your hand up, and like I said, please feel free if something's relevant, you got any thoughts, anybody can jump in, but I'll continue if you got your hand up to roll through those as well.
Thank you. I'm sorry to go back to the conversation about the BRT, but I was wondering how much CTA and also CDOT is considering the ETOD, the new ETOD, and the impact that is going to have in like a higher demand in the bus routes, the busy bus routes. because I think that taking the bus to the next level is increasing capacity. And one way to do it, and also at the same time with providing reliability, is with BRT. I don't see another way.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this exactly answers your question, but CTA was closely involved with the new ordinance and figuring out how to add more bus corridors to it. And the determination, is you may be familiar, but just for the group, was to sort of use frequency of service as a proxy, right? So to focus on adding more bus routes that have a minimum level of frequency. And I think, we're very supportive of it, and it's a chicken and egg thing, right? As the demand and the frequency build upon each other. We definitely would want to, I mean, there are a lot of bus routes now in that ordinance, right? Because the threshold that was used was relatively low by, I think it's high by sort of national standards, but low by Chicago standards. We have a lot of routes that meet it. So, we'll definitely be looking at those as we look to revise the Better Streets for Buses plan to make sure we've got some consistency. I don't think that it's realistic to think we could do BRT on every route that's an ETOD bus route, but we can look at other factors to figure out which ones might be the best candidates for bus lanes, et cetera.
David, you've had your hand up for a while, so I'll throw it to you, and then Fabio and Michael, I'll get you guys next.
Sure, I'll be quick. First of all, I want to thank you all for all the work that you've done to organize this and to meet with us, to answer our questions and to chat with us about this. Active Transportation Alliance understands there are barriers to implementing true BRT, and we are a bit perplexed about what those barriers might be. So I think using advocates and using the resources you have to educate people on why you can't do something that they want. I mean, I was in a meeting about Better Streets for Buses earlier today and heard that hundreds of people spoke out in support of something specific. Thousands, possibly millions of people want to see something wildly specific like true BRT. But it does seem that the city and CDOT and CTA aren't as direct as they could be about what those barriers might be, whether it's public opposition, the parking meter deal, aldermanic prerogative, or just people not wanting to give up parking anyway. But we need to hear those things as people come into these collaboratives, as people who use the bus, use transit, so that we can help you build momentum around supporting what people want. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you hear every day that people want to see true BRT along very long corridors with red lanes all over the city. So we want to hear why that's not happening and why it hasn't happened already. Very specifically. So I know Fabio was also going to get it to that, so I'm going to let him speak too. But feel free to answer that. I know it's sort of a rhetorical comment, but
well,
yeah,
I can jump in a little bit. As we talked about, I think the parking in general, whether it's paid or not, is a big obstacle. The opposition from local politicians and a lot of residents and business owners too. I think, for Active Trans Alliance, the audience that you already have that maybe, is another sticking point for us is the competition for space between buses and bikes and protected bike lanes. And, I honestly, I bike more than I ride CTA myself. And I, wholeheartedly believe that, that needs to be, the safety of cyclists and, finding good paths for them is extremely important as well. But, I'd say, I'd be willing to bet that the bike breakout session is bigger than this one right now, just because there's a lot more enthusiasm about it in the city, for better or worse. It's, I think equally as important and, sometimes hard to distinguish, where you give and take between bus and bike and, other road users. I think, CTA and CDOT, would agree, yes, let's improve both. They're both important. We are progressive thinking when it comes to treatments on the roadway, compared to the past when it was all about private automobiles. But there's still that, there's not always room for both to have the gold standard. And, like I said, I just bring that up to ATA because, I think you have a very bike friendly audience that, maybe you could help educate in that realm.
Yeah, I do just want to add before we break out, there's never discussion about taking away a lane of traffic, taking away car access so that you can have both bike lanes and bus lanes. And I think that presenting what you just presented to me is sort of this false choice. So I do want to push back on that. I don't think that's a respectful narrative to give to people who are at a mobility collaborative to hear about how you can make buses and bike lanes and walking safer for people and how you can prioritize BRT. So please refrain from using that in the future with my organization, but I do understand where you're coming from and I appreciate what you're saying, but 14 seconds, sorry.
One of the things that ATA can do is make bicyclists more respectful of pedestrians. We'll go any place you want.
So I'm going to try and keep this very short so we can get to the discussion, especially since we got delayed a bit. I'm going to outline a little bit of what's happening around the city in terms of bicycle infrastructure, sort of where we're going in terms of strategy, but really want to spend most of the time having the conversation about any questions in terms of bicycle infrastructure, ideas of how we can move forward. And really, all of us in this room are hugely passionate about cycling in the city, transportation in general, and really creating great communities. And so I want to get a dialogue going of how we can move forward faster, quicker, and efficiently across the entire city. So real quickly, this graphic just shows a baseline of where we're at in terms of the bicycle network across the city and how it's changed over the years. We really are focused on expanding the network of protected bike lanes and neighborhood bike routes and the trail system, which all kind of make up, what is commonly called across the country the low stress bike network. Last year, we had, at the beginning of 2021, a local funding source that kicked in called Chicago Works. And that included a dedicated local funding source for complete streets projects, which is something that we've never had in the city before. And a lot of folks on this call had advocated for that for a long time. And it's really been a great addition and allows us to move quickly. And we really are committed to
recording in progress.
The number of protected bike lanes and neighborhood greenways around the city. And we want to talk about how we can move even faster. We're really pushing ourselves on design standards to open up the door for more streets. If you can mute yourself for right now, that'd be good. Getting some feedback, thanks. So we're really pushing ourselves on design standards so that we can more protected bike lanes across the entire city. The image on the right here, again, if you can mute yourself, please, that'd be great. Last year, we produced a document called the Cycling Network Update, and we'll be updating this again towards the end of the year to get into more details in terms of a look ahead. And last year, we started an exciting initiative called the Neighborhood Bike Network. It's a community-driven strategy and partnership to implement bicycle infrastructure. We focused on communities that have had historically little to no bicycle infrastructure, and with the help of partnering with the community members, we've moved quickly to develop a visible network. Just want to quickly show a couple of upcoming protected bike lanes. Some of these folks may have heard about or seen presentations on. Some of these may be new. All of these are being implemented in the near future. Just to mention a couple of these from this list, Kedzie and Augusta are examples of really revising design standards, so that opening up the door to convert buffered bike lanes into protected bike lanes, which will really help expand the network across the city. Milwaukee Avenue, south of Division, just got resurfaced and is incorporating protected bike lanes and transit boarding islands. And along those lines, most of us we realize and we know that when we design our streets to be comfortable for biking, we're making the streets comfortable and accessible for everyone. And so, you know, I'm always interested in talking with groups about, you know, how we can better communicate to the larger folks around the city who aren't on the call, or who may not be interested in biking, that when we design a street for bikes, it makes the street more comfortable for everyone, no matter how you're getting around. And so the goal is to create a connected network of low stress options throughout the whole city. One of the things that we've heard quite a bit in our engagements, especially for people who are new to biking, is that providing a network that highlights local trips and local destinations is really important. And so we want to balance both of these scales, developing networks for neighborhoods, but also developing a comprehensive network across the entire city. And so the discussion here and this presentation is really about, you know, how do we prioritize where we go next? I've got a couple of slides here. You know, Chicago really is a city of neighborhoods. Different neighborhoods have different contexts, different perspectives, different needs, you know, when we're thinking about the citywide scale. And this graphic is trying to get at, you know, an acknowledgement of that, that it's not necessarily a one size fits all approach across the entire city. Network development is most successful when we partner with communities. And in the past, which I'll touch on in a minute, you know, sometimes skipping through the process, especially in a community where biking isn't as visible, has been a challenge and has actually set us back in the past. And so our goal is to speed up this progression, bring every neighborhood to the next stage of network development, and get as quickly as possible to a citywide network of protected bike lanes and neighborhood bike routes. And on the citywide scale, we want to define a short-term priority network and move really quickly. And something that we're doing, we're in the process of documenting and looking at all of the arterial streets, or arterial streets meaning some of the busier commercial streets all across the city, so we can easily and quickly understand what it would take to fit in protected bike lanes and how we can achieve that. And so we're looking at a number of various physical attributes within the roadway, along with a variety of network considerations as well. We have a grid system in Chicago, but there's a number of barriers throughout the network, and some neighborhoods have more challenges in connectivity than others. And so part of what we're looking at is what we're calling a barrier analysis, which you see on the screen on the right. We're looking at how one single barrier actually creates network and connectivity challenges for a much larger area. And so just to flip back on the previous screen, this is the system of rail lines and the river system and other single point barriers. But if you really dig into the details of what's happening in terms of the street network, there's much larger areas that are impacted in terms of mobility and connectivity. And I think this analysis can be really helpful in helping to point us towards prioritizing streets and identifying where we need to really push for top infrastructure, and to help make the case for trade-offs when it comes to creating space and allocating space on our roadways. I mentioned earlier that the neighborhood network effort has been focused in communities that have had historically very little. This year, we're partnering with South Lawndale Little Village community, and we want to keep that momentum going to the larger Southwest side in the future. And it's a process, and we've learned a lot from past experience. This example on the screen, a number of years ago, we tried implementing protected bike lanes on parts of the boulevard system, and we weren't successful because the process wasn't there. The neighborhood network process we started last year. We worked in the North Lawndale community, and really started to build a relationship and regain trust within the community. We were able to come back last year, install protected bike lanes along Douglas and Independence Boulevard leading to Douglas Park. And we're continuing to partner with Belmont Craig community, keep the momentum going. But like I said, we really want to expand that to the southwest side where there's really a very little bicycle infrastructure. And as I mentioned, balancing the neighborhood approach, the goal is also to create a citywide network of protected bike lanes, neighborhood greenways, and something that we want to talk about in a couple minutes is how do we get there as fast as possible while still maintaining trust, maintaining relationships, and long-term success. And one strategy is to think about developing networks within the network. So community networks, providing people with comfortable options to get to important neighborhood destinations like parks and schools and commercial corridors. But again, thinking about that in the context of the entire city and balancing those two scales. And so this is the last, second to last slide, and we'll get into the discussion, but wanted to just show a map and a little bit of a preview of where our minds are at in terms of 2023 priorities. And we want to get feedback from folks on what makes sense, what are we missing, and where should we be, some ideas about where we should be focused. And so for 2023, a few of the priorities that are on our mind. First, begin planning, design, and implementation on a first tier priority corridors. And these are corridors that connect communities to each other and can help provide the foundation for a much larger low stress network. So those are the streets that are highlighted here in red. So for example, South Damon, South Halstead are really important connections to great assets like the Major Taylor Trail, or help to connect across barriers like rail lines and multimodal yards, referencing the maps that I showed earlier. Secondly, we are partnering with IDOT on designs for protected bike lanes. As some of you know, the Clybourne protected bike lane, which was installed, feels like many, many years ago, was the first protected bike lane on an IDOT jurisdiction street. And so we've been cultivating, developing that relationship with them. And so we are starting design work on several state jurisdiction routes. Those are highlighted in yellow. So for example, South Chicago, that in its entirety or just about its entirety is IDOT jurisdiction. Washington and in the West Loop are streets that we're looking at. But partnership with IDOT and making improved bicycle infrastructure on state jurisdiction routes is key to the citywide strategy. Third, continuing to build upon and improve the neighborhood bike network approach. So continuing to work in South Lawndale and to continue that momentum across the Shipping Canal and I-55 and down to the southwest side and Brighton Park, McKinley Park, Gage Park communities. Again, where I mentioned that, there's very little bicycle infrastructure. There's a lot of connectivity and network challenges. So we want to continue that momentum and go further south. Partnering with other agencies like Cook County, they're working on a bike plan at the moment. We'll be working with them to develop a network plan for the east side and the Lake Calumet region and Big Marsh Park. And we really feel a sense of urgency to expand the protected bike lane network within downtown. There's just a ton of people riding. The demographic of who's riding a bike has expanded incredibly. And so, we really feel, as I said, a sense of urgency to expand protected bike lanes in the downtown as well. I tried to get through that as quickly as possible. We want to kind of move that into just an open discussion now. And I'll stop sharing my screen in a second just to so we can see each other a little bit better. But we put together these points just to help spark some conversation. First, there's a ton of work to do. We all agree on what we want to do, and we want to have a discussion of how we prioritize projects and neighborhoods. Again, if you could mute yourself just for a minute. You know, how do we engage with neighborhoods on the importance of a citywide connected network? If everyone could just mute themselves for just a second, I'm getting a bunch of echo. And so how can we move quickly, and how can we give community leaders the confidence to support changes on our streets? How do we expand the coalition? So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. Can everyone please mute themselves? Or, I mean, we can jump in and probably do it blanket, but I don't really want to do that. Okay. So from there, I know a couple people have their hands raised. That's helpful. At the bottom of the screen, you can hit the reactions and raise your hand if we can do that to kind of keep things easy for everyone. And we can kind of go along and just on call on folks. And then I think there may be some stuff in the chat that Brad was looking at that as well. So he'll call out questions in there. So I guess at the top left of my screen is Ethan. Ethan, you got your hand raised. You want to unmute yourself?
I do. I'm happy to speak, but I would like to defer to the Sam Bell Memorial Foundation if I can first.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Ethan, and thank you, Dave, for everything you've shared. My name is Lindsay. I'm here today on the call on behalf of Sam Bell. As many of you may know, a cyclist. He was the young man who was killed on September 8th while riding his bike. So obviously, everything you shared, Dave, was very helpful, and it's very promising to know that the city sees such an importance of prioritizing, you know, the options and accessibility for commuters and specifically cyclists. Please know that I have the utmost respect for the city of Chicago. I think that the city planners have done an exceptional job historically, and I also think that with any thing that's already really well established, I think there's always room for improvement. So please know that my suggestions come with the utmost respect to you and your team and the people who have come before you. I heard a lot about innovation and about what's going to be coming down the pipeline as far as new development and things to look forward to. One thing that I would really encourage you and your team to add to your 2023 priorities is regarding safety and security, because whereas more people are encouraged to commute and to, you know, whether it be on a bike or walking or whatnot, it seems like, you know, if you keep putting up bike lanes and we keep making things more accessible and we do things so quickly with a sense of urgency, but we're not simultaneously expanding the measures that are absolutely essential to ensure that we're protecting the people and the increase of individuals who are commuting, I think that we're doing a disservice not only to, we're doing a disservice to everyone, and certainly to people who, you know, absolutely. Sam was he was a cyclist. If anyone on this call knew him, he was very supportive of safety and following the rules. And he, you know, wanted people to respect commuters throughout the city. So I think that specifically in the intersection where his accident occurred at Milwaukee and Huron, I think that we are personally, the foundation was just established, and one of our areas of focus is to increase visibility for cyclists and pedestrians in that intersection. If you're already working on something that you would like to speak to that addresses how you all can, you know, start with what we have as far as increasing security measures and safety, I think that would be helpful. Because if we just keep adding new bike lanes and new options for people, and we do this with this sense of urgency to accommodate the need, again, I don't think that that's the way that I think that there's an extra step that needs to be not only considered, but as a best practice moving forward, if there is a new bike lane that intersects with an intersection and that, you know, whatever the final conclusion will be from what that best practice is, I just implore you, and you all are experts at what you do. I respect your professions. And, you know, the vigil for Sam is actually happening right now at that location. And yeah, if there's anything you could speak to specifically to that location, wonderful. If there's any plans or conversations that have happened, I think that would be helpful as well. And I thank you again for this opportunity to connect today.
Sure. I missed your name at the beginning.
Sure. My name is Lindsay Stanley.
Lindsay, thank you very much for the question and comment, and for your work in honoring Sam and memorializing him. I think a lot of us, I'm sure many of us on the call did know Sam. I knew Sam as well. A lot of my good friends were very good friends with him. And so it's been pretty incredible to see and to hear just how many people have been impacted by the loss of Sam. So I appreciate and really respect you guys being out there and bringing attention to this. One thing I'll say, so Milwaukee, so we will be looking at this, you know, particular intersection to see if there are, if there's any improvements that can be made, and for ideas. That's something that we really try and do routinely when there is a severe crash. We are looking at the entire corridor of Milwaukee Avenue. In one of the previous slides, the slides that I had shown, we mentioned a few of those sections. So south of Division is getting protected bike lanes, Addison to Irving Park. South of the Ohio feeder, Kinsey to Ohio, will be getting protected bike lanes next year. So, and we want to begin a process where we're looking at Milwaukee Avenue in really a challenging section in Wicker Park between Division and Western Avenue, where there's just a ton of people biking. It's really the busiest, one of the busiest streets for biking in the country. A ton of pedestrian activity, local businesses. It's a dense street, but it's not super wide. It's a pretty narrow street. And so we want to start a process over the winter where we are engaging with chambers of commerce, elected officials, community groups, advocates, residents to see how we can make changes to this section of Milwaukee Avenue to really have the street better reflect how people are using it. And it's such an important bicycle corridor. So that is going to be a very high priority for us. The other thing I'll say, just to not take up too much time, but the other thing I'll say is that when we know that installing protected bike lanes and bicycle infrastructure makes the street safer, not just for people biking, but for everybody. One anecdote, and it's one of many, is Milwaukee Avenue, just north of the area that we were talking about, Western to California. We installed protected bike lanes, and we saw the street. We saw the number of total crashes go down for everybody, no matter how you're getting around. There were 0 pedestrian crashes, bicycle crashes went down, motorist crashes went down. So I think that's something that, you know, I'm certainly interested in talking about that today, but also continue, you know, in the future, and continue that conversation of how do we connect the dots between planning our streets, designing our streets for those most vulnerable. It's not just about somebody who's riding the bike or walking, crossing the street at that time. It's really about making the street safer for everyone. And I think that's something that we, you know, all of us together can figure out how we can better communicate that to folks who these issues aren't at their top of their mind, and really build a bigger coalition. The amount of support and enthusiasm and interest and advocacy around safe streets is right now is like it's never been before. It's bigger than it's ever been before. And so I'll just throw that out there. Like, how can we continue to build on it and really bring in folks who this isn't at the top of their mind. But So Lindsay, I hope I answered your question. And again, thank you so much for what you're doing tonight.
Thank you.
Ethan, I know you were, I'll come back to you, even though you gave up your time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. There's so many things that could be mentioned, but I'll try to keep it short with three quick things. The first is I'm glad to hear we're talking about how our already protected bike lanes are not adequate. I know that one of the big pushes is adding concrete to all the protected bike lanes that we're just paint and post from now on. And we've already heard, and seen photos of drivers parking in these spaces for long periods of time. Concrete's already starting to crumble, and it's been weeks. And the upgrades, aren't really changing anything about the network. So, when you look at these designs to improve protected bike lanes, look at protected intersections, look at things that work across the city, and try to just install those in as many places as you can. And if, these little concrete things aren't working and deterring drivers, that needs to be changed. And if the infrastructure isn't tall enough or isn't, there aren't enough concrete barriers to keep drivers from blocking the lanes, then we need more and we need better. It's just common sense. The second thing that I will say is, if we know, for example, that protected bike lanes, between Milwaukee, California and Western make the street safer for everyone, why aren't all arterials designed this way by default when streets are resurfaced or rebuilt? If this is truly the safest option, then it should be absolutely the default every single time you change an arterial. Kind of seems strange to not do that, knowing that it's safer than anything else that we have. The third thing that I want to say, Belmont does come to mind, exactly. The third and last thing that I will say, the 2023 priorities are a great start. And there's been a lot of talk on this call about protected bike lanes. Haven't really heard a lot about greenways. Safe streets on quiet residential side streets are so much easier to build and politically feasible and more cheaper to build than trying to get protected bike lanes on arterials. It's not that we don't need protected bike lanes on arterials. Those are great. And I love that you're doing a standard design element to make that happen more quickly. But think about how many neighborhood greenways could be built for that same amount of cost at much more easier, cheaper, and again, politically more feasible for neighbors and residents to understand how that makes their neighborhood safer. And you can do that in a way that also connects, both in a local and across, the city context. So I'm just confused as to why a massive expansion of greenways isn't also part of your 2023 priorities. I know that was three large things, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. Good to see you. So one, in terms of greenways, that absolutely is a focus of ours. And we have expanded the number of greenways incredibly. The first neighborhood greenway on Berteau was 2013 or 2014, and we've come an incredibly long way since then. And we're going to continue that. That is a commitment of ours. Any successful bike network, if you look at some of the gold standard cities around the world, it's a combination of both arterial streets and neighborhood routes. Because some people, I love biking on neighborhood streets. I always have. And it's just really like a great way to get to know a neighborhood. You find a lot of great connections to parks, etc. And this was brought up already, even, sometimes even with a protected bike lane, there's a level of stress that comes along with it. An off-street trail is the lowest stress that we can get because you're nowhere near cars. With protected bike lanes, it's very difficult to have no interaction with a car be that an intersection or a driveway or something like that. So focusing in on how we reduce that tension at those conflict points, which you were getting at with protected bike lanes, is totally right. So that is absolutely something that we have been looking at. How do we slow down turns at intersections through concrete, paint and post, rapid delivery projects, whatever we can do to really focus in on those key conflict points. One that I'll mention also is bus stops. You know, for everyone on this call riding around the city, a traditional bus stop, the bus pulls into the curb, which is a shared bike lane space. Something that we're doing now and we'll be rolling out aggressively and trying to standardize in the years to come is in-lane bus stops and bus boarding islands. So we're doing that. We've got one under construction right now on Milwaukee at Maplewood in the Logan Square neighborhood as part of the Milwaukee resurfacing project, Chicago to Division. There's going to be about 7, I believe, boarding islands installed in the coming couple of weeks. So the for transit users and transit operations, the bus stops in the travel lane. We're prioritizing transit. People boarding and alighting the bus have more space to stand and to get on and off, not blocking the sidewalk. The bike lane is totally separated from the bus, so the bus is no longer pulling into the curb. And it's not, you don't provide that opportunity for a motorist to illegally park or stand in the bus stop in the bike lane. So that type of design element is something that, you know, we're gonna see these rolling out in large amounts quickly. We've got about 50 boarding islands that are designed and moving into the construction phase. And we want to keep that going and get to a place where that really is a standard design element across all programs. You know, resurfacing was one that was mentioned. So with that, I'll end that there, but thanks, Ethan, for the comment and the feedback. Okay. Michael Young.
Hey, Dave, I'll just jump in. I do want to add just one comment. I know, Ethan, you brought up some of our precast concrete curbs and you know, noticed some of them have been hit, are doing a little crumbling. And this is really the first time we've ever rolled out something like this and are using this first batch really to learn a lot and already have in terms of little details like where the rebar needs to be placed and how you can change an edge to make it more durable. And we actually have updated designs that look a little bit different than what you see that we hope to roll out later this year as well. So we're really trying to learn as much as we can about this first batch of curbs and continue to update and iterate as we go. So I want to bring that up.
Thanks, Brad. So next on the list that I've got is Michael Young.
Hey,
hey.
How do you define a protected bike lane? Please keep it short.
So a protected bike lane across the entire country is defined as a bike lane that's physically separated from moving traffic. And
I'm asking you though, like how does CDOT define a PBL?
But yes, so a bike lane that is physically separated from moving traffic, and that physical separation, you know, could be a parked car or a parking lane. And as was mentioned a couple minutes ago, you know, we are really aggressively working to incorporate concrete curbs as a standard element for our protected bike lanes.
What would the minimum height of the curb be?
Curbs are traditionally 6 inches high.
How tall are the barriers you're currently using?
About 6 inches.
I'm sorry, I measured one. It didn't turn out that way. Okay, thank you for your response.
Sure. Okay, next on my list at least is Dixon. And Dixon, just a second, Brad, if there's any anything from the chat that it makes sense to call out for the group, you know, just jump in. Go ahead, Dixon.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm here with the Southwest Collective, but hold on one second. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm here with a community group on the Southwest side called the Southwest Collective. And I wanted to ask about the bike infrastructure that you're planning for the Southwest side in particular, because, you know, there's obviously gaps in bike infrastructure all over the city. but the southwest side is one that doesn't have a lot in particular. I remember Archer Avenue was identified as a spoke route, I think back in 2010 or sometime around there. And, you know, there's virtually no bike infrastructure along Archer Avenue that's been, you know, put up since then. And in my experience, I know this is anecdotal, but riding on Archer Avenue, I feel like has gotten considerably worse since then. I used to live in McKinley Park, and I would bike to the loop pretty regularly. I live in Archer Heights today, and I will avoid Archer Avenue at all costs. So that's one question. Just curious what you have planned for the southwest side in particular, and Archer specifically. And then I also wanted to ask about the notion of, you know, we have this big physical barrier dividing line between the neighborhoods north of I-55 and the Sanitary and Ship Canal and south of I-55 and the Sanitary and Ship Canal. So you look at streets like Central and Cicero and Pulaski and Kedzie, even though Kedzie goes underneath the expressway, and they're totally inhospitable to biking, but to really anything except for driving in a car. And so you know, sadly, I've kind of written those streets off, but I wonder if there is anything, you know, that might be planned in terms of making them more bike friendly and in terms of, you know, encouraging transit between, you know, neighborhoods north and south of 55. So there's not, you know, this sort of physical barrier between those sets of neighborhoods. So those are my questions.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dixon. I didn't connect the name to the Southwest Collaborative, but we will be reaching out to you very soon because I know you guys are doing a ton of great work on the Southwest side and are going to be a good partner on the neighborhood network process. And so that we'll be reaching out to you and to others in the community later this year to get that process going. Crossing the canal is incredibly challenging, as you mentioned. And that is something that we've had a lot of discussions about with folks in South Lawndale, a little village community, over the course of this year. One, there's limited options, as you mentioned. You know, California, Kedzie, Pulaski, Cicero are really your 4 options for getting across the canal. And that is what we want to do, is create a connection and break down those barriers. And that, you know, came out in the barrier maps that I was showing before. Right now, Kedzie is sort of shaping up in our minds as a potential route to focus on to get over the canal. North of 31st Street, we're working on designs for Kedzie through the South Lawndale community. And I think there's opportunities to continue that north to Garfield Park and up to Humboldt Park. This is one of those, you know, really potentially powerful crosstown connectors, connecting communities, connecting people to each other, but getting across those really challenging barriers. So that's sort of the, in terms of that specific location, that one is sort of rising to the top of our mind, but we want to start this neighborhood network process, which I think has really been very powerful and transformative approach to how we're planning our bicycle network. So we want to bring in you as well as a bunch other community leaders in Brighton Park, McKinley Park, Archer Heights, and workshop this together because it is incredibly challenging. The shipping canal is not the only barrier in your part of the city, you know, and there's multimodal yards, rail lines, viaducts, and the street network. You know, you have Archer Avenue, which does, you know, you don't have the connectivity or the grid system approaching, you know, crossing Archer Avenue. It's very challenging. It's one of the most challenging parts of the city in terms of connectivity. So we want to work on that with you and others in the community to figure out how we can do that quickly and meaningfully. And Archer Avenue is absolutely on our mind. We'll be part of that discussion. It is a very important connection for the Southwest side to go northeast to other neighborhoods and ultimately into downtown. Part of that touches on some of the cross jurisdiction or cross agency collaboration that I mentioned. Sections of Archer or different sections of Archer change jurisdiction. So we absolutely look forward to that conversation. Thanks, Dixon. So I've got on my list Gabe.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. And also, if I could just jump in real quick, like if this doesn't have to just be a question for me, an answer kind of thing. Like if other folks want to jump in and build off of one of the questions or responses, or just add a similar perspective or different perspective, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so I had a quick comment and then also a question. My comment is, I don't bike around the city, like on the city streets a whole ton. I do feel like to connect to parts of infrastructure that feel safe, you have to pass through a lot of unsafe feeling areas as a cyclist. And one spot that I have noticed that has been sort of new are on one-way car lanes, a bi-directional bike path. I think that's turned out a lot better for feeling safe than I initially would have expected. The only comment I have about that is it seems for cyclists, the lack of signage going in the opposite direction is can pose some danger. So for example, biking on Wrightwood specifically, the one-way signs are only facing, like for cross streets, are only facing so drivers can see, and not cyclists going in the opposite direction on that bi-directional lane. So I think that's pretty important to have not just the stop signs visible to cyclists, but also yield signs and one-way street signs for cross streets. So that's my comment. And then I have a question, and I know this has been posted in chat, and I want to echo something that Ethan said that I don't think you fully did justice. And that's when streets are resurfaced, that bicycle infrastructure that is non-existent is not increased to have bicycle infrastructure, and existing bicycle infrastructure is not upgraded to match demand and increase safety and increase demand ultimately. I'm specifically thinking of Belmont, that was in the news recently, and also I live off of Diversey in Logan Square, and that was recently repaved, but the bicycle infrastructure there was not upgraded to what it could be. And I just really want to make sure that CDOT is kind of expressing why this is not a priority, especially because this infrastructure is basically permanent for decades. And so that seems like a huge lost opportunity, and I'd like you to speak specifically on that for a while.
Sure. So I'll talk about the resurfacing program, and then and some of those points that you raised, and then if there's anyone who wants to jump in on the neighborhood greenway contraflow issue, we can talk about that as well. So arterial resurfacing is one program and one avenue that we can be incorporating complete streets elements, bicycle, pedestrian, transit onto the street. And depending on, now there are some parameters and some limitations on what we can do. And that depends on the program, the funding source. Much of the arterial resurfacing programs are federally funded, and so there's a process associated with that, which can make it challenging to incorporate really big wholesale changes, kind of like you were talking about. So there's a little bit of like a timeline and scale challenge. Now we've had a lot of really good success stories when it comes to street resurfacing and incorporating complete streets elements. If you look back, 8 years ago or so, there's very little was happening in terms of arterial resurfacing and upgrades to the street. And so there has been a lot of progress, and we want to keep that going, and we want to do more. So there's some timeline and administrative challenges that come along with that. Some streets, in order to put in a protected bike lane, for example, like it requires a big change to the street. So something like changing the number of parking lanes. You mentioned Belmont, for example, and that's an issue that we have a number of good success stories where we have removed parking from one side of the street in order to change the design. I mentioned one on Milwaukee Avenue, and that's something that we want to keep doing, but it can be challenging in terms of timeline, administrative process, and logistics within the resurfacing program. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't, it doesn't mean that we're locked into a street design until the next time the street gets resurfaced in 10 or 15 years. So sometimes it's a bit of an iterative process where we're making upgrades. There's some projects where we've been very successful in incorporating a lot of complete streets elements.
Hey Dave, I just want to jump in and make a few points around resurfacing and connect that back to a few previous things in the presentation. So as Dave alluded to, generally in the past, resurfacing has primarily relied on federal funding, which is administered through the state. Not only is that federal funding process very long, often we see those projects take years and years to come in. We're actually just now seeing some of the resurfacing projects hitting the ground now were designed a number of years ago. And the second point of that is that we do have to work through the state of IDOT, working with their design standards for that. Now, that is starting to change. One, because as Dave mentioned, we've been updating our design standards. And unfortunately, that takes a little bit of time to start rolling out new things. We're starting to see new designs for protected bike lanes and bus fording islands rolling out. That's going to continue to come out over years. The second part is I want to really emphasize the importance of local funding that really just became available to us over the last year, which gives us much wider reign on what we can and can't do, and is going to give us more of an ability to roll out more complete streets elements much quicker on resurfacing projects and do it much more quicker. So it's going to take some time. That Chicago Works funding has really just hit a year ago, and we're going to see more and more as years go by, be able to be quicker, to use better, our better design standards and things like that.
Thanks, Brad. So I'm just doing a time check to see how much time we've got in the breakout room. So I'll wait to hear back from them. We've got 5 to 10 minutes or so. So it looks like there's about 6 or 7 people that have their hands up. Gabe and some other folks brought up neighborhood greenways and contraflow bike lanes, and how it's important to focus on those types of bike routes in addition to the arterial streets and protected bike lanes, et cetera. Anything that anybody wants to jump in on, with a raised hand or not, regarding that?
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Sure. Is it Andrea?
Yep.
Okay.
I was given a bike map at a festival, and I guess I was extremely frustrated to open it and see the inaccuracies on it. I think the whole length of Elston says it's a buffered protected bike lane, and while a lot of the street is at every major intersection, which is the most dangerous part for biking, that bike lane actually just completely disappears. And it's a bike lane I bike frequently, and while I'm comfortable there, I had a friend who just started biking, and I was commenting on this, and she said that would be a big problem for me, because if I relied on that map and then got to one of those intersections, I would be put in a very uncomfortable spot and a very scary space. And I'm concerned that those parts are also being counted as through our numbers, and it just isn't up to snuff. And then my second comment is just, it feels like we're fighting and fighting and fighting to get bike lanes, but streets just get redone and repaved and changed all the time. And why is there such a big difference as far as like adding a bike lane versus just doing a street? It just feels like we're jumping through hurdles, and streets don't have to do that.
Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, I mean, look, intersections and intersection design is critically important, and that can often be the most uncomfortable place, and it's also the most challenging place from a design perspective, because there's the most amount of competing demand from everyone on the street. And it's absolutely a focus of ours to make intersections safer and to really focus on those for both bicyclists and pedestrians. But thanks, Andrea, totally hear your point. Does anyone want to jump in and add on that?
Dave. Does CDOT support the ordinance that would require the department to follow the safe street design whenever a street is resurfaced?
I would not speak on that personally on behalf of the department. I'm just not in a position or familiar enough to do that.
Can someone to speak on this ordinance, please?
Okay, thanks, Scott. We'll make a note of that. Okay, so just top of the list, Trina W.
I was curious, are you familiar at all with the design concept of Andfleshten? It's like a Scandinavian road design concept.
No, I can't say that I am.
So
at least not by name.
Okay. It's similar to Greenways in a way. I specifically lived in Copenhagen actually for about a year.
Yeah.
And kind of one thing specifically that's what Andfleshten is kind of trying to decouple between different modes of transit. So trying to have different specific thoroughfares for say like if you're taking like the bus and like the L and such, then walking paths, then biking paths, and then specifically for like walking separately from that. So to try and essentially kind of sidestep the issue of putting protected bike lanes onto major roadways, like minus like, again, kind of areas that might be, like you were saying, like areas that are hard to connect. Because specifically when I was there, something that I kind of in retrospective have noticed was a lot of the roads specifically like were either neighborhood streets.
Thank you very much. So the first thing that we want to do is talk about how the work of Safe Ambassadors and our engagement work advances CDOT's goals. So something that comes up in these kinds of meetings all the time are discussions about all of these plans, right? All these targets that we have. We have the Chicago Strategic Plan for Transportation. We have the Vision Zero Action Plan. We have a Streets for Cycling Plan, a pedestrian plan. There are just so many goals that get laid out. And I think it's important for us to be talking about that here because we know that we can't advance our infrastructure goals. We can't change mode shift unless we're out communicating with people and talking to our neighbors. So some of the goals that we're working to reach every day in the work that we do are to increase the percentage of adults who walk, bike, and take public transit to work. That is a clear goal of CDOT. We want to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. That is the Vision Zero goal. Zero is there as a goal for us as we continue to try to move this forward. Increasing awareness of dangerous driving behaviors. This is core work for the ambassadors. improving driver safety education. I mean, it's all written out here, right? We want to do this by prioritizing the areas that have been identified as high crash corridors and areas that have, that are most deeply impacted by traffic violence. And then in addition to that, a new strategy that's just rolled out this year is by distributing bicycles to people for free. So Bike Chicago is the city's commitment to distributing these resources out to the public, and the Safe Ambassadors play a huge role in that work. So I'm going to just move us on to the next slide here. Angel, did you want to take it?
Yes, I could take it away. So before I dive in, feel free, if you all have ever worked with us, feel free to raise your hand in the chat, or you can just say in the chat that you have, or you're familiar with the Safe Ambassadors. And I'm going to share a little bit of background on our program. And again, the goal is to make this as interactive and engaging as possible. And anytime you guys have a question or feel like you have a comment or something, please feel free to share in the chat as we're going through the presentation. Each slide is going to bring something unique. I encourage you. So thank you. So community engagement is something that the Safe Ambassadors do. Before I dive into that, in 2001, Bike Ambassadors began, which educated 10,000 people. Okay, that's where it started. And just so you all know, if you were familiar with the Bicycling Ambassadors, we're no longer called the Bicycling Ambassadors. In 2020, the program rebranded and we are called the Safe Ambassadors. And SAFE is an acronym for Streets Are for Everybody Ambassadors. Okay, so again, we do all kinds of community engagements like street festivals, block parties, neighborhood pop-ups, community bike rides. We do health fairs, CDOT open houses. We do work with the ward offices that host events, and we come and support it. And that could be a bike ride, that can be a tabling event, that can be presentations. It could be all sorts of things. And then, of course, CDOT's open boulevards. Okay. One other thing I do want to highlight on the community engagement that isn't on here is a new way that we also started to engage, right? And that's through media, which isn't a bullet point. So you get a bonus bullet point on here. So that is another way we like to engage. Next slide, please. So the slide before this was just a very broad description of like all the other things, but this slide, we want to kind of shed light on very specific programming, the ones that are most popular and the ones that people usually gravitate towards. And our free Learner Ride classes is actually one of our newer classes that we have to offer at CDOT. We started this in 2016, and we've built this community around teaching people how to ride. And of course, it is one of the things that we enjoy the most. So we have three classes that we offer. We have a beginners learn to ride class, the second class, which is the road ride, and the second class is a skill builder. And then the third class is a road ride. All right. And the idea behind this is to have students be more engaged into learning how to navigate the streets, not just learn how to ride a bike, because a lot of these individuals are older individuals of all ages, all different backgrounds, who've never got to learn how to ride, and we actually teach them in a 2-hour class. And for the past couple of years, we've had a demand that people wanted more. They didn't just want to learn how to ride. They want to know how to navigate this bike. They want to go out. They want to ride out on the road or on the trail. So we have a skill builder as the second class, where we are practicing very basic maneuvers, hand signaling, being able to look back, so on and so forth. And then the road ride, as you can see in this picture, we are very visible. We have flags that says, student bikers. And we have a very nice route that actually is all protected, is all bike lane, is all around new infrastructure. so the students can feel more comfortable. And then we have Kids Learn to Ride, which is a pilot. It was a pilot year, and we don't have a slide for junior ambassadors. I'm gonna shed a little bit of light on this. And again, feel free to ask questions. Our Kids Learn to Ride class is taught by our junior ambassadors program, which is hired through the Chicago Park District. So this year we decided to try a peer-to-peer teaching for Kids Learn to Ride. So kids get to actually learn how to ride from other young people, not their parents, not their grandparents who don't have patience with them, right? But some other kids who go all around the city of Chicago and do presentations to specifically Park District kids. So the junior ambassadors specifically do presentations, usually to young people. And for the first year ever, they were able to successfully teach kids how to ride a bike, okay? And I think you can go to the next slide. I'm trying to not spend too much time on these slides.
Right, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time either.
Yeah.
And we, there's going to be plenty of time for us to talk, so we'll just keep on going. The next awesome programming segment that you have to share with us.
I'll keep this one short. So we have the Safe Routes to Schools, and it's our program where during the school year, we actually go in person and teach kids that are in 2nd and 5th grades ped and bike safety education. And in the high schools, what we do is our high school mobility education, which was previously known as the driver's ed presentation, because the goal here was to educate the kids behind the wheel, but also educate them on how they interact with bikers and with pedestrians. So a lot of the things that we do teach these kids usually are not taught by the teachers. They don't have the curriculum. They don't have the new information and infrastructure and stuff like that. And for the little ones, we just keep it very basic. We do outdoor workshops with the kids as well. We practice everything that we teach them inside the class, and we also go outside the classroom and go outside, test the speed of cars, go on a walk with the 2nd graders, so on and so forth. Next slide, please.
So this slide is, sorry, Angel, I didn't know if you muted it, if you were just passing it over to me, but this slide is kind of features one of our newer efforts. And I think that what it speaks to is we can have all the infrastructure and the new safety improvements and the focus in the world, but it can be very, very difficult to just get people out on bikes. A lot of times people don't feel, obviously comfortable doing it for the first time. Some people don't have access to a bicycle. And it's more than just building things and selling bikes, right? So the Bike Chicago effort is a 5-year program to distribute 5,000 free bicycles to Chicagoans who qualify. And the ways that people qualify are, first, if they participated in one of our Learn to Ride classes that Angel was talking about, if they're participated in one of our Green Corps programs, which is a CDOT program that provides workforce readiness, job skills training for people with barriers to employment. In addition to that, we also have been raffling off these bikes at some of our Open Boulevards events this fall. And when people do qualify for a bike, it's not like they just come to pick it up. We are providing education to every single person who comes in. So the Safe Ambassadors are so perfectly positioned to do this work. If we didn't already have this great team in place, this program would not be as far ahead as it is, I think. And so when people come in to pick up their bike, they're getting a free helmet. They are getting a helmet fitting on how to wear it appropriately. They are getting a bike lock, and they're being trained on how to use that U-lock to make sure that their bike, stays safe and stays secure with them. They get a multi-tool and a bottle of chain lube. They get a light set so that they can, have the front lights and the tail lights on the back. They also are getting, great sessions like the ABC Quick Check, things like that we teach to everybody when we're doing community engagement to get people out riding, not just to give people bikes, but to have them get a way to be continuing to use that and operating, you know, on our streets safely as well as they can. In addition to that, they get a route planning session where we talk through all the different bikeways, how they're presented on the Chicago bike map, and they're provided with, you know, digital ongoing resources to be able to continuously support, you know, this sort of new endeavor that they've brought on of being a cyclist in Chicago. So that's our newest, you know, sort of flagship program that we do have going. And these are photos we really did just get up and running at the end of August. So we're pretty excited to be able to share these pictures. On the left, it shows an image of, you know, Liz, who's in front. She was one of our ambassadors over this summer, preparing all the helmets, and folks, you know, getting the fit in the background. In the center, we have Caro, who is working with someone to talk through the bike map and all the different features there and help to plan a safe route. And then on the right, we have our ambassador, Chris, who is there with someone who actually she taught how to ride a bike for the first time. So we're really excited to be able to share some of that work that, you know, we've been able to put together. But I do want to say that, you know, it's it's great to be in the breakout session where we get to talk about these really feel good strategies, all these different things that people you know, that different ways that we can reach people on an individual basis. I do want to make it clear that this isn't the only way that CDOT reaches out to people. When specific infrastructure projects are being, you know, built and planned, each one of those projects has its own education and engagement component. Oftentimes you'll see the safe ambassadors there ready to talk to people about facilities, ready to ask people questions about what their needs are and how they want to use those. So just so you know, this, you know, the safe ambassadors isn't the end all of how we're working with people. But, you know, the other thing to keep in mind is that it's not all fun and games, right? We have a lot of challenges that we're trying to meet. And one of those challenges is there are, you know, a ton of people who know about our program, who want our program, who are requesting to have our ambassadors come to their schools, come to their block parties, help ride with their bike rides, help to marshal their bike rides, and get involved at the community level. But one of the challenges is that we're trying to balance the need against the demand, because the places where people are reaching out for us, asking for more, you know, ambassador presence aren't necessarily the locations where people are experiencing the greatest hardships. So this map that I'm showing here is a map of our high crash corridors. It's from our Vision Zero action plan, which came out in 2017. And it does show a lot of the corridors and neighborhoods where, unfortunately, people have been most deeply impacted by traffic violence. So that's one of our challenges, is that, you know, we might have the phone ringing where people are really interested in having us, but we also know that we do need to be ready to focus our attention on, you know, areas where folks may not already know who we are, but they do know the challenges, and they do know, you know, they are experiencing, you know, a higher percentage of traffic fatalities and traffic crashes. So that's just like one of the challenges that I wanted to lay out there. And, you know, we have a unique approach that we use in each community. And then there are some things about growing our program. We're going to be increasing to a full-time staff. And, you know, what we really want to talk about in this group today are ideas and strategies that people might want to share for increasing, you know, our reach and getting a little deeper on that. So, you know, we're coming kind of to the end of our slides now. I have just one more, and you know, these are the questions that we want to ask to have feed our discussion today. So if everybody, you know, can feel free to raise your hand if you want, or unmute yourself if you have any questions. We want this to be, you know, pretty open. We actually do have a pretty small group in here today. So I don't think we're going to have, you know, too much of a problem with, you know, everybody talking at once necessarily. But we are definitely looking for your ideas, any opportunities. You know, has anybody on the call here ever worked with the Safe Ambassadors before? Are you familiar with the work already, or is this all brand new to you? And feel free to unmute if you'd like.
I'll go ahead and speak. I'm pretty familiar with the Safe Ambassadors. I actually remember the program back from Chicago Center for Green Technology. That's how I learned about it originally. One question that I had, just looking through like next steps in collaboration, I wondered to what extent the Safe Ambassadors coordinate with just standard repave projects that roll out all over the city all the time, because I feel like that might be an opportunity that's sort of being missed. Because a lot, as I understand it, like we just had a big project on the lakefront, right by the lakefront trail, for repaving Montrose. And it was great. There were a lot of things that were added, but it was like there was no people actually that were potential partners in the area had no awareness of that project. And it, was a standard repave, but every time you're doing those projects now, you're adding safety features. And so I just wondered if there was any connection already there possible, because it would help to tout, that there's more to this than just repaving streets, And also it taps into so many different neighborhoods at once. And I realize that's a really fast rolling, expensive repaving is,
I'll be happy to answer this. So thank you for the question. So for repaving, it's not, I guess, much outreach for like repavement, but what there is outreach and engagement and education when it comes to newer projects. For example, if it's a contraflow lane that's happening in a neighborhood and we know about it, we make it our job to really go out there and educate the people that are utilizing it, but also maybe go and buy it. We also create content around that as well. There's, for example, on the infrastructure, like in the infrastructure locations, there's posters at some of these locations that are posted by CDOT, and our ambassadors go out there and put these posters on the poles, and these posters have a description of what this infrastructure is for and how to use it and why it's there. And we go out there, we put those posters up, and we try to engage with the community as much as possible. And we do an evaluation, and based off of that evaluation, we do send it back to CDOT so they know what the public is asking or needing or what are their questions. On top of that, we also create digital content that goes on our social media, but also the goal is to create the social media to be shared to the ward office.
We're still maintaining the through sidewalk for pedestrians while giving bus riders a space to wait that's in addition to the sidewalk. So again, it's a plus for multiple roadway users, and you can see it shortens the crossing distance for pedestrians as well. So getting into longer term projects, I'll start talking about bus priority zones again. This is the last bus priority zones slide, but we can get into it more later. So we received some grant funding that will expand the bus priority zone initiative, and we're looking to reach additional corridors and neighborhoods. As I mentioned before, it's really looking at spot treatments and improvements to kind of unsnarl the bus at pinch points where we have lots of frequency and lots of ridership. Just like everything else, it's going to be a balance of, the space being allocated to different roadway users. But, we really think that there's a lot of places that have an opportunity for
resurfaced under our. Thank you. Every time a city street gets resurfaced under our arterial resurfacing project, that's an opportunity that CDOT actually has been using for years and years to look at that corridor, look at the lane widths, look at all the pavement markings, and then try to incorporate any new designs that we can to make the most of it, right? As long as you're going to be resurfacing the entire street, this is a great opportunity, and there's more coordination than ever has happened before. So some of the projects that Angel mentioned, like contraflow bike lanes, for instance, are some of those more innovative things that people aren't necessarily used to seeing every day get incorporated into those resurfacing projects. And it's the work of ambassadors to go out and, like he said, post the signs, help people get acquainted with those new style, the new style of bikeways. We used to just have one in this city, and now there are so many different designs and world-class changes that are happening. But to tie it back, Melanie, to your question, that was, I think you were just asking specifically about the repaving of the Lakefront Trail. Is that correct?
No, I was talking about the repave of Simon's Drive, which
Okay.
added a whole lot of pedestrian safe features. And
Okay.
there's a really active group of stakeholders out there, and like we didn't find out about it. We actually approached CDOT, and unfortunately, it was really great because we were actually able to get the plans and make some comments, and we're planning to do a follow-up just to see kind of like what happened this summer, to see how did it go, and give that feedback to CDOT. But I couldn't help but think there's so many people that come from all over Chicago, for instance, to that particular area that was, all this great stuff was going on that CDOT was doing there as sort of an expansion of that sort of repave. And yet nobody knew about it in advance. So that's another question I had, was like, how much lead time do you need to set up programming? Like if we had known about that project, we could have probably done something, but how much lead time do you think you're going to be needing with your planned expansion, things like that?
Yeah, that's a very productive question when it comes to the lead time. And I think probably some of the disconnect, to just be, in full transparency, probably some of the disconnect comes from different divisions. If it is something that's being moved forward under arterial resurfacing, and they're then, relying on their contractors to, get that project implemented, along with, another whole list of things being implemented, that it will be difficult for us to nail down the exact timing. So that's just a little, FYI on, what some of the disconnect may be. But I think as far as, the opportunity, I think the one lesson I'm getting out of your question and out of this discussion is that we should be looking for ways to, to kind of look at it on a global level and say, all right, which are the corridors that are going to be getting, significant redesign, and then being able to reach out to our local community partners to know who to reach out to say, these are the upcoming changes, this is the information, and here's how we can work together to make sure that local neighbors and others who are passing through the space have the information that they need. One newer thing, and I'm not sure how closely it plays into AR, arterial resurfacing that is that on the CDOT webpage, if you go to chicago.gov/transportation and you go to the bikeways page, they now do have they have two things. One is the sort of interactive Google map that's updated monthly, that shows all the new bikeways that have gone in. But below that, there's actually a sort of Excel list, kind of roster of upcoming segments that are about to get upgraded or redone. They don't have specific dates for when it's happening, but they are listed as like planned, underway and completed. So that's another tool that's out there. But I mean, I think what I'm learning from this is that that's a great opportunity for us to be, coordinating more locally.
And just leveraging too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Melanie, I mean, I thank you for bringing that to attention. My next question, to add on to Amanda, this is great. What we're learning is, what kind of education, what kind of engagement would you like to see? What would you like to see? Because we want to do it right and not just do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I know it's a capacity issue for you all, and that's why I'm happy to hear that you're actually going to be growing. The first thing I thought of, and maybe you already do this, is do you work with the park advisory councils? Because a lot of kids are trying to walk or get to the parks, and they're active in so many communities. That would be just a natural point of outreach, especially in the off season. I don't know if you already do that.
Yeah, we do it from the work we do it's very broad, right? And we do focus at the park districts during the summer, and we visit over 100 parks, and we do talk about we could talk about infrastructure and stuff like that to the supervisors and for the people who are at these parks. Another way that we also share this information is like if we know some of these infrastructures are happening, let's say around a school, our ambassadors, we identify these things ahead of time. So when we do presentations, let's say to the 10th grade class, to the teachers or to the parent groups, we will update our information with the most current information that we have about their neighborhood as well. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to be talking about driving safety. Did you know about this infrastructure that is meant for, drivers, left turning or whatever the infrastructure is? So we do it, and we would like to do more of that, right? We just need more of a collaborative effort from everyone and like just bringing it to our, because here's the thing, like we know some of these projects are happening. We only know what we have in our database. But again, since there's so much overlap with a lot of different departments and how things get done, sometimes it's as simple as people just reaching out and like letting us know, or like, and hopefully the way we can kind of get to that level is like having something that's more consistent and sharing with the public, like where we're going to be in the next following weeks, right? Knowing that we're going to be at a school. What school is it? What region? What neighborhood? What ward? So if you all know we're going there, that's an opportunity for you all to bring something to our attention, and then we can update some of our curriculums or our education. So when we go to these neighborhoods, we are, we understand fully what the neighborhood's needs are, and also what is being developed and stuff like that. So
yeah, we don't have a uniform approach for park advisory councils, but I think that's a great suggestion for opportunities
for sure
for joining them when we can and when we have the contacts.
That's great. To Shamika's question, I thought that was a really good question. It's like, what would we like to see? I think also another thing is that's really positive about the ambassadors is that it's like a very positive association. And so, you have to remember, a lot of times people in communities, we don't understand all these different silos that everybody's in. And people don't understand that CDOT is this giant thing that has many different, parts to it. And so like, they just say, oh, that's CDOT, you know what I mean? And because it's like the city, you know what I mean? So like, you guys actually put a face on things. And I think the more we can see your faces, I know there's only there are not very many of you, but I think that's a really good thing. And to also that people start to sort of see this brand, and if it's through, social media or whatever, that's like a really good thing to start. And then be aware that you're going to be getting questions about things that aren't really specific to what you all do, that maybe to be prepared somehow to channel those questions and information or input back to the other parts of CDOT, you know what I mean? So that there is sort of like a flow of information and that people look at you as somebody that can help, I don't know. Because CDOT's doing all this great stuff and people never know. So anyway, I've asked enough questions.
Thanks for being on point with that, like realizing that. We appreciate that acknowledgement, and also that you want to see our faces more. But yeah, I think there's definitely room for us to be able to take questions that are coming from the public and field them back, through our department to be able to answer some of those questions. Or like when somebody says, oh, that's CDOT, my hope is that the Mobility Collaborative is going to be a platform for us to be able to get that sorted out. When somebody asks a question, I think the traditional answer in the traditional, cartoon sketch of a city worker is, oh, if it's not my department, they just say, oh, not my division, I don't work on that. And I think that what we really want from the Mobility Collaborative is a way to find a conduit between these different divisions to be able to, hunt down the answers to people's questions and be able to provide that actual follow-up. I think that's a great way for us, I hope, to be able to build more relationships with people. So thanks for that, for acknowledging that. It looks like we do have Nick in the group here, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to ask us any questions or make any comments if you have any thoughts on what we've been
Hey,
talking
y'all.
about.
No, my apologies. My my battery is super low. I'm at this circus with the young ones, so I appreciate you guys letting me sit in and join in. And I see Shamika and I saw Commissioner Gia in at one point. Yeah, my initiative is a Cycle of Peace. We work with youth, specifically around violence prevention and in essence, teaching peace preceding power is a modus operandi that we should all implement. Not just in some of the hardest hit neighborhoods, but even in these corporate environments and in our governmental agencies. You know what I mean? We all know about challenges, and much like Sister Melanie was saying, a lot of the good work that you all are doing, I feel is kind of not as communicated as even I would like. I just discovered these initiatives really on the ground at an Open Streets event in Bronzeville. Yeah, and I had a chance to speak to Commissioner Gia, not knowing who she was. She walked by me as a cyclist, and I was a vendor at the event, sharing information about what we were doing, and we engaged and we had a great conversation. And I'm here now, but one of the things I feel could help all these great works is just, again, what you all are saying you want to do is just be more on the ground. I'm losing you guys. Oh no, I'm losing you. No.
We can still hear you.
This battery is.
It's gone.
Well, at
Oh.
least we had a chance to hear from
Yeah.
Nick, and also it's great to hear, great to have participation from somebody who's working on violence prevention. That's a tremendously powerful field, and I want to learn more about how transportation work can help support that or address that. Maybe he'll be able to come back in. But we also, it looks like we have Matthew and Nick Schrag as well, if I'm pronouncing that right, who've joined us in the group, and just want to make sure we're opening the space and providing a place for you to ask any questions that you might want to. Okay. Well, so if we have a few minutes here, just another thing maybe worth talking about, that second question we have about youth-oriented organizations who might be interested in partnership. I think the reason we put that on is because of the work that Angel's been doing with the junior ambassadors. We didn't have a specific slide for that program, but Angel, you want to give us a few minutes and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of my biggest passions is giving back and just providing an opportunity for young people to do the work we do. And that's how I started. So it's something that I always enjoy doing. Now, it's a challenge, right? And it's a challenge getting young people to be interested in this kind of work, but also it's even more challenging that they're just not aware of an opportunity like this, to ride a bike and go and educate young people and making sure that they're riding safely and they're on their bike safely and talking to families and stuff. And it's an opportunity that I try to share with as many schools, high schools. The ages usually are from 16 to early 20s. And the goal is for them to be able to shed light from, again, like the Kids Learn to Ride was such a good highlight from just parents and families coming together and their kids learning how to ride a bike and interact with our young people. And it connects with so many different things, and it's not just transportation, but it's an opportunity for these kids to just know what it is to work aside with like a government agency, or like go to some of these events that we do that's like a tabling event, or see a presentation for like a bike to work presentation, or go out and do some kind of infrastructure like engagement and learn about the decisions that the city makes. And the young people get to really see this and kind of engage in the interests of this sort. And again, it's teaching overall that they're doing, and they can like do a lot of different things, like go to school and be a teacher, or they can potentially work for the Department of Transportation or be an urban planner, or these are things that are foreign to me when I was in high school that I didn't know was available. So I try to do the best we can to offer this opportunity. Usually junior ambassadors, we get about 18 to 19 kids that work for 6 weeks in the summer. And even the Park District is looking to expand that opportunity for young people to be able to do this all year round, more on the part-time side, and be able to go after school and do something like the work that we're doing. So it'll be great if there's other agencies that you all can identify, or if there's a group of young people that you all work with or work closely with to share this information, because there is a recruitment process that is pretty difficult to get through, because it is something that is a long process when it comes to Park District, and even Park District struggles to get kids hired themselves for specific parks. And our kids specifically go to all the parks on bike and do the education, right? So the more the merrier, and the more promotion, the more support that we have with this network that we have here, and your involvement in the work that we do. This is one step closer for us to getting more people riding safely and just being around, so anyways.
And so the process for the junior ambassadors is that they apply for work through the Park District, but then the Park District is working in partnership with CDOT in order to bring the juniors out to educate kids, right? And it's like the concept of peer-to-peer learning, right?
Yep.
So a young kid who gets a presentation on why biking is great, or why you should be careful when you're out crossing the street, or how to fit your helmet properly, that's going to be more exciting to them if it's coming from a teenager, from someone who's like closer to their age. And so anyway, but it is, I think, complex with the Park District stuff. Shamika, did you have anything? I saw you come back on camera. I didn't know if you had another comment or point you wanted to add about the JAs.
No, it's a great thing. We're trying to get people who operate motor vehicles or anything as early as we can, get them as early as we can, so we can change the behavior, so that the infrastructure and the behavior coincide and we're all safe. That's
Right.
it, that's all.
Right. We are going to be expanding the program this year. In the past, we've had just 3 full-time year-round staff, along with a big host of seasonal folks. And this year, we're going to be adding 2 more full-time year-round staff. So that's exciting for us, just the general full-time safe ambassadors. So that, we see that as an opportunity for growth. And I think our hope is that we're going to be able to, get some more, deep connections in communities. So that's something we're interested in, and interested in any more ideas or questions that anybody might have on how to reach people.
Have you thought about working also? I mean, the Park District is great because I think they used to be the largest employer of youth in the summer. So like that's in the state. So that's like a huge.
They might still be.
Yeah, that's a really important connection. I just wondered about, have you thought about the forest preserves? Because one thing that I know some kids like to do is come out to the suburbs and go and ride on trails, you know what I mean, where it's safer and kind of off, like kids get wrapped into that. And the Forest Preserve has a lot of programs that try to engage families. And those, there are people who come out of the city. And then also it would teach people, you could do some interesting things. It might teach a lot of other adults too. Like how can you get, how the forest preserves are just beyond public transit, like how do you get there, kind of thing. And you can ride the bus out, you could ride out there,
right?
Just like you could do some more kind of like exciting things or fun things like that to maybe.
That's a great idea. I think the forest preserves are a great example, because there's such great locations and such great cycling resources, but it seems like people are putting their bikes in the back of cars and driving there and parking in the parking lot to, you know,
Yeah, or riding their bikes. Actually, I just moved to the suburbs, disclosure, because I'm taking care of my mom who's 97.
wow.
And I'm like amazed. I'm by the Salt Creek Trail, and it's like they're families that I mean, they have come far to get there, and they come on the train too, on Metro, because there's that weekend pass, and they all bring their bikes. And if you could start doing stuff like that, it would really like get people more flow, you know? So I don't know, that might just be an idea too, to tap into some ideas they might have.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. That's very cool.
Yeah,
And,
I
and
will look into connecting with the forest preserves and see what kind of youth programming they have. And again, like the forest preserves and the trails and stuff that we always recommend are newer riders that do learn to ride. Like, you know,
Yeah.
if they don't want to ride in traffic, like, hey, we always recommend all the different kinds of trails. And you know, hopefully one day we could do something like that with, you know, with the community and just, you know, do some trail riding and with young people. And it's something that I think kids will enjoy. And we do kids bike rides at the parks with the kids. And but again, like depending on the parks and the infrastructure that they have, not all the time is it a super big park like Marquette or like Humboldt Park, for example. You know, so awesome. Thank you.
right. Does anybody have anybody on the call have any other ideas about how we can reach people? I think, you know, one of the common themes that we hear about is motorist behavior and educating people on how, you know, how to drive a car around cyclists. It's something that we definitely have been working on, but just interested in any creative ideas or strategies that people might have for us to be able to expand that work.
Maybe some background of how we've been trying to do it, and maybe
Sure.
everyone kind of knows what we have done or tried, and what we haven't already what we haven't tried.
Let's start
Um,
with what we have tried, because I
what
want
we
to make
have
sure
tried
we're
exactly.
tapping people's ideas, right? We
Exactly,
want to pull
exactly. So
from the group.
that was the point I was trying to make. So again, like we do start young, and we start with the driver's ed classrooms in the schools, and one way we can get that done is if more high schools knew about the program, and it takes a lot of effort, right? And um, we have a lot of people that join in on this call that maybe have children or kids, or you know, but like, what are their connections to certain schools? Are they able to share our information? Because again, we do a handful of schools, maybe a few dozen of high schools per year, and there's a lot of high schools. So that's one thing that we do try to do with the young people. For the adults, again, we do have pamphlets and stuff, and we do enough tabling events and community engagements and presentations. There, we are always able to share that information from a motorist perspective, even if they're not like bikers or not into biking, because our goal is to always educate all the transportation users. Like we talk about, you know, CTA, we talk about motors, we talk about ped safety, and it could be a biking event, but not everyone's biking there, or it's a tabling event and it's a broad spectrum of all these different kinds of vendors there. It's an opportunity for us to target the drivers that did go there, right? And we try to share as much information from there. We tried to offer this education to adults, like maybe a presentation or so, but that's again a more difficult challenge to get to, because where are all the motorists? We do a lot of community engagement that requires, you know, not a vehicle. There's people that are biking there or just walking there, or taking public transit. But like, where do the drivers where are they all coming together to talk about safety, right? So like they're not around. So but I think the biggest one that we try to tackle, that we've been making an attempt on, is creating content for social media to share with ward offices and to share with the public, and even for CDOT to share with the public if it's through Twitter or Instagram, whatever the case may be, because we understand people are clicking on their phones. People are on their phones looking at the latest news or whatever, right? So creating something that is, you know, short and digestible for people, that it is not all the education that's around drivers, but like it could be as simple as like making sure you open your car door with your right hand versus your left and practice the Dutch reach and why you want to do the Dutch reach. And it can just be a section of just that, and trying to share that out with people, and hopefully just educate little by little when it comes to these behaviors relating to cyclists and pedestrians and so on. So as you can see, the adults is the group that we do struggle with in engaging, because we don't know where everyone is at.
Shamika, do you we didn't feature this in the session, but the child passenger safety training as an audience for reaching out to motorists too. It's a pretty cool concept that we didn't feature. Do you mind giving us a few words on that approach and why you decided to pursue that?
Sure. I mean, I'm a mom, and kids need to be safe. I'm reading articles. I mean, the way that I read, the response is that the way that we react in the state program is based on what I read in the news. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so if I hear that there's kids there was car crashes and kids were ejected from cars, maybe we need to spend some time ensuring that the children are in the car seat safely. When we go do safe routes to school presentations and a kid says, "Oh, my abuela is texting," she's probably not doing that from a bike. So like there's an opportunity there to make sure that the kid is safe as well as educate the motorists.
I can inject on this. So, and that was the one audience that we did identify where we're like, well, you know, you have to put car seats in your vehicles, you have to do it safely. And we were able to get staff certified to be technicians in child passenger seats safety checks. So that was an opportunity for us to come in as a SAFE program and partner with the hospital to implement these car seats into people's vehicles, provide it for free if they register. And on top of that, they get all the education that we are trying to share out in the public. We are able to share that on a one-on-one, and it's a more intimate event, right? So it's one-on-one with a family. They're getting their car seat. Now we can talk about all these different things to be aware of when you're, you know, behind the wheel, right? So that was one of our audiences that are adults, relatively so, that we identified and we've been working towards.
Right. Yeah. Sorry,
I just had one quick question. Have you tried? Do you connect with like Disability Lead and some of the more comprehensive disability organizations, and just have like a palette of all the stuff you guys do that you could say like, these are our modules? You know, do you have any, you know what I mean, to kind of that's another, you know, like from the pedestrian side, a lot of people that I know that are very concerned about safety issues are people who are in a wheelchair
and
or blind, or, you know.
And that's why we're as we build the capacity and hire more people. Now we can work with the mayor's office of people with disabilities, because people with wheelchairs need cars, right?
Yeah.
People with wheelchairs or mobility
or bike or buses.
Right. They need to move around, and we want every public transportation is a public health issue, and everybody should be able to move around. And so as we build the capacity and have more people on the team, we can then work with the mayor's office of people with disabilities and work with other organizations to ensure that everybody can, because the streets are for everybody. And we mean what we say, everybody.
Yeah.
Right. I think, the mayor's office for people with disabilities is the primary. We also, you know, are interested in building up, you know, more partnerships with more organizations. So, yep, great question, Melanie. What was the name of the organization that you mentioned?
disability lead, and I'm pretty sure the commissioner's involved, actually. I mean, the mayor's office for people with disabilities, I'm pretty sure she's actually connected to disability lead. I just like a lot of the stuff they do because they're I mean, like 1 in 4 people has some disability, and so many disabilities that affect your safety in a traffic situation or on the streets are not even visible.
Right.
You know, like we
Yeah.
tend to think of like wheelchairs and stuff, but there's a lot of other things going on.
Certainly, vision impaired, hearing impaired, just not being able to cross.
Cognitive impairments, all
Right.
kinds of things, you know, and
Mhm.
and I just know that there's a lot of activism around street safety in certain communities, so that just seemed like it might be a good connection.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, it looks like the room is about to close. Angel, can
Thank
or
you.
Shamika, can you please save the chat here so we have Matthew's comment saved? I don't have host privileges and I just can't seem to share it. Thank you so much, Melanie, Nicholas, for everybody who joined us on this conversation. Even though it was a pretty small group, I think we still kind of kept the points going pretty well. So really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Is it working, Shamika?
You saved the chat? I think
I can't do it. I'm not a host. I can't.
Try to match that. Oh, thank you, Romina. We try to match that with the community assets that people have in these communities. And the next step for us was to build relationships with the community institutions that have a higher rate of crashes around them. So we identified a few nodes on the west side, especially in the Austin and the Garfield Park neighborhood. The North Lawndale neighborhood had a separate effort, you know. But within the Austin and Garfield Park community, we identified the Columbus Park, like the library, Lafayette Park, as the main kind of nodes around which we want to build pedestrian safety improvements. Because when you have more of these concentrated around an institution or node, the more benefits you can see from those improvements. One such example is the Jackson Boulevard project, which previously was a 4-lane street through the heart of Columbus Park. We heard from people that it was very difficult for them to access the park because most of the residents live on the north side and most of the park is on the south of the Jackson Boulevard street. So what we did was we kind of narrowed the street down to 1 lane of traffic in each direction. We installed pedestrian safety improvements, such as pedestrian refuge islands, but also installed transit improvements, such as bus boarding islands, to kind of make sure to make those bus stops more accessible and improve the experience of people riding transit through here. We also included protected bike lanes through this section of Jackson Boulevard. Here you can see a rendering of what we had proposed in a meeting with the ward, and then what actually got built. So when we talk with the community, we show them exactly what they could expect, and then we are trying to deliver on that. And it is possible because we have the Chicago Works funding to be able to do that. We are trying to build partnerships with community institutions to make sure that we are not just informed by data, but are also informed by lived experience of the people. We, once we identified like the library as one of the nodes we wanted to focus on, we talked with the Melody School, which is, you know, between Wilcox and Adams, just east of Pulaski. What we learned from the school is they have programming going on with the community garden that they have on the south side of the school, and some like, you know, people go to the library parking lot that's on the north side. what we did was we wanted to make sure that this lived experience is translated into a project. We also have proposed pedestrian refuge islands for people to be crossing at Pulaski, crossing across Pulaski. There are already 2 refuge islands installed at Wilcox and Pulaski, Adams and Pulaski. We want to install more. Ultimately, these are the raised crosswalks that were built. There's, the one on the right, I always mess this up, is on Adams, and the other one is on Wilcox. So this tries to establish a safer connection between the community garden and the school, and the library and the school. At the same time, once we install these improvements, we are also trying to communicate to people that use these improvements about why exactly were these improvements installed. You can see over here, we have posters that we install that communicate to people that this is a raised crosswalk that was installed for you because it helps you cross the street safely, or in a safer way at least. We also have speed bumps in advance of this raised crosswalk to make sure that people approaching the raised crosswalk are actually slowing down. We have, so these were like 2 projects that I talked about, but we have a slew of pedestrian safety projects that we are taking from the West Side Plan and Northwest Side Plan recommendations and converting it to reality. One of the exciting ones has been Central Avenue project that is already installed and has improved crossing in front of Milton Brunson School, which is right here across Central Avenue, which was one of the big ideas that were proposed in the Vision Zero West Side Plan. We are continuing our focus on schools and parks, though. So this is a project that we are proposing in front of the conservatory, Garfield Park Conservatory on Central Park Avenue to help people cross Central Park Avenue from the conservatory to the other side of the street. We are targeting installation. We were targeting installation this year, but it seems like the contractor is having capacity issues, and it will be installed early next year at least. This is paired with protected bike lanes on Central Park Avenue. So whenever we are doing a project such as a pedestrian focus project, we are also leveraging on us already being there and trying to incorporate as many other multimodal improvements that we can at the location. Right now, you're in the pedestrian projects breakout group, but you will hear something similar in the other breakout groups, such as the bike program. Whenever there's a bike project going in, they are installing pedestrian improvements as well. So there are various ways in which the department is trying to install improvements. We are focusing on schools. This is this was just installed over 2 weeks ago at Lindblom School, and this came out of our engagement on the Vision Zero South Side. So we engaged with Lindblom School, and Romina was on those calls early this year, and we wanted to make sure we are doing something and responding to that engagement. So that's why we have installed paint and post improvements around Lindblom School for now. But this is part of our larger strategy in the sense that when we install paint and post bump outs, we are trying to upgrade them to concrete through other ways. One of the ways could be through the Chicago Works funding, but concrete bump outs are, like anything in concrete, is much more expensive. So for example, what we have over here is a paint and post bump out that was installed in fall 2019 as a result of the recommendation of the Vision Zero Downtown Plan. And that was upgraded to a concrete bump out when we had a resurfacing project on Kinsey Street. We are trying to leverage more and more of such opportunities where we install something that is paint and post and convert that into concrete later on. We talked a little bit about the other Vision Zero planning efforts. So we are really excited to be wrapping up on the Vision Zero Northwest Side community plan, and the Vision Zero Southside Community Plan is also in its almost final stages. And this will give us recommendations for newer projects, and we will be working to kind of ensure we can get maximum of those recommendations turned into reality. This is the strategy that we are using for whatever local money that we have, and we would love to hear from you about how you think of the strategy. Lastly, there's one more thing that I would want to say is that this is not just the work that we are doing. So I'll slightly touch on something else that we are also doing. We are looking at the data and trying to develop programs based on the analysis that we have through crash data. We saw that almost 40% of the people injured or killed at an intersection were injured or killed by a left-turning vehicle. And we want to ensure that this is improved on. So that's why we have a new pilot project, which was, we installed it at 5 intersections in downtown first, but now we are expanding it to other locations in the city. We are still considering it pilot because we want to do more evaluation, etc. But this is the left turn traffic calming project, where we are installing these rubber speed bumps and hardened center line to make sure that vehicles that are turning left safely, are yielding to pedestrians and not turning left at high speeds. So that's the main chunk of what we wanted to communicate with you. We'll soon open it up, but let me take a moment over here to make sure to say that we have a few things coming up, right? So with the Vision Zero Southside community planning effort wrapping up, we do have a Cottage Grove safety workshop on October 15th and 59th Street safety workshop on October 26th. There are open boulevard events happening. One on Drexel Boulevard in Bronzeville just happened on September 18th, but there's the Douglas Boulevard event happening in North Lawndale on October 16th, and Logan Boulevard one happening on October 30th. We want to keep in mind all the people that we have lost due to traffic violence, and we would be having a World Day. We will be participating in the World Day of Remembrance for traffic violence victims on Sunday, November 20th. And we will have, we are lining up for the planned releases for the Vision Zero Northwest Side and the Vision Zero Southside Community Plan. With that being said, I think, Romina, that ends the presentation part of the breakout group. We can probably, hear from people, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and I know that there has been some questions in the chat, and there are also, thanks, Ms. Lucas. I was just going to mention, we do have about 30 people in the room, so it would be great just to raise your hand so we can see you in the queue and pass the word on it. I think just to summarize, Sid talked a lot about projects and really showing what are the big strategies that we're trying to incorporate in the projects that we're doing. And then he dived specifically into some examples in schools and parks, and some other parts and boulevards and some other parts of the city. So I'll stop right there. And I saw Ms. Lucas' hand going up. I think the first part, we just wanted to address some questions before diving into the questions that we have for you. So Ms. Lucas.
Okay, thank you so much. You guys are doing a great job trying to service the whole city. It's a big city, and some areas are more isolated than others. And you already know my particular interest is in the far south side. Have we come up with a plan for Vision Zero far south? Can we look at some of the recommendations from prior plans and implement some of those pedestrian safety tools? I'm particularly concerned about the Riverdale Multimodal Transportation Plan. It was approved in 2019, and very little, if any, has been done on the very fast and famous 130th Street. The community is now preparing for a full-line grocery store that should be operating sometime in 2023. The community of over 7,000 people should not wait until the red line extension comes for us to get the additional safety things that we need. And I would like to urge CDOT to please take a look at the 130th Street and the conditions and the little minor things that we could do that will make the pedestrians safer as we welcome this economic development that's coming to our area.
Great, thank you, Ms. Lucas. And yes, I think the strategies that we're trying to use as label as Vision Zero, they're basically just the mission and what we're aiming for across the entire city. What you see in the map, it's not boundaries where we are just thinking about Vision Zero in those areas. We think about Vision Zero in the whole city. Those are just priority areas based on the number of crashes and the data that was gathered. So yes, Ms. Lucas, definitely that's something that we can start thinking about the far south side and other parts of the city. And we'll get back to you. I know that that plan has been on the shelf for some time, and I'll follow up with you, Ms. Lucas, so we can talk more about that.
Thank you so much,
Ms. Lucas, we have talked.
Yes, you know the history.
Ms. Lucas, we have talked, and we definitely we have improvements planned on 131st Street, at least because it's a local jurisdiction. It's a CDOT street, but I was actually in Hegwisch just earlier today, and 130th Street is on our mind for sure.
May I ask who's speaking? I don't understand.
Yeah, you're next, Fatima. Yes, you are next.
No, I'm talking the gentleman, whoever the person that was speaking was that.
Oh, Sid, that was Sid.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Fatima, and I was gonna quarterback on with Miss Lucas. I'm on the edge, Riverdale. I like what I see, but I still feel left out. I like the connection with the schools, the transit, and the parks, and I'm still feeling left out coming and connecting from Riverdale, 130 Layden Avenue, 100 Indiana, 135th, 136, the bridge, sidewalks. It's and it is a connection from 136 in Indiana, from the Metro Pace. We walk. I'm a walker, and I'm walking into the community to connect to Beaubien, to get to Golden Gate, to get to Du Bois. I'm passing all these people. So those 3 key points is good, but I think we need to kind of pull us, get some focus on the edges. People coming into our communities, like Ms. Lucas mentioned, I would like to get some more from the Riverdale multimodal plan because we worked hard on it. She was a leader in that, and I'm still walking past the same mess. So I don't know what C dot, I dot, who dot, what dot. I'm confused, but I'm sorry. I'm just really trying to see how the allocation goes. And we just honored a spot on the river for the Underground Railroad. So people are gonna start coming. So I really want to just note the focus on that bridge, Indiana Avenue, 136, the edges, as well as 130th, walking. Can we make some emphasis? And please, I'm saying please, like Miss Lucas, put some emphasis on us on the edges. Far South Side, since that's what we're called. I don't know. I was kind of offended when kept saying South Side. I was like, wait a minute, what are we? Okay, Far South Side.
Far
Okay.
south side, yes.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Fatima. Yeah, we're making notes of all that, and we'll definitely get back to you on that. Thank you. I see Ashley next.
Hi, thanks for taking our comments today. I wanted to bring up the issue of winter snow plowing. Winter's just around the corner this year, and oh my God, every year the snow falls. We know it's going to happen, And every year, the city becomes completely inaccessible to those walking, rolling strollers, getting around with walkers. Like, it is an ADA nightmare because we do not allocate resources to make the pedestrian infrastructure actually accessible to people. Meanwhile, I don't even know how much money the city is spending to plow roadways, to keep highways like basically swept clean, like you could eat off of them. Like, I want to know, like, what are we doing to make pedestrian infrastructure snow and ice free so that we can all get around. Thanks.
Mhm. Right, and I think just to respond to that, and we're making notes of that. And I know that I have Sid and Vig on the line, but this is not the best response because I'm passing the ball to someone else. But CDOT is responsible for plowing the bike lanes. Streets and sanitation are responsible for plowing parts of the other street. So I think, again, that's why I'm saying I'm just passing the ball to some other department. So again, Vig and Sid chiming if I'm mistaking and providing misguiding information. But I think to your point, yes, it has to be plowed. That's something that the city overall needs better coordination with different departments, also aldermanic offices, and also individuals who own lots or properties that also need to be plowed. So that's also part of home ownership. So I think that's part of education and part of investment and supporting in general, keeping people safe over the winter.
May I briefly follow up there? I know that you're pointing me to who is responsible for plowing the sidewalks, which is by and large personal property owners who can't always be trusted to do it. But it's also on CDOT to write the plans, right? Like, you all are writing the plans and making the policies that the city is reacting to. And winter snow clearance on sidewalks could be a priority for your plans and for the vision that the city is setting for future infrastructure projects. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And I see Alex Nelson next.
Thank you for taking my comment. I'm curious if any of the CDOT organizers or employees that are on this call can name 5 of the 25 pedestrians that have died this year without looking it up. Cool. So
I guess I can say this over here. Thank you for your comment, Alex. It is really sad whenever we come across a crash report. We have there's a coordinating committee that reviews each and every crash report. And it is one of, it's the thing that I hate the most, right? When I have to read a crash report, we have discussions for each of the crash report to see what could be addressed at that location immediately. And at the same time, what is sort of the larger issue that could be addressed. A lot of the times, the solutions are not the low-hanging fruits, and that's the reason why there are the crashes that they are. There was a teenager that was killed at Western and 55th, a 15-year-old. And we went to that community and we talked with the mothers in that community as part of a follow-up of that fatal crash. And that was the hardest thing for us to do. And it we really don't want anyone to get killed. And at the same time, what I can say is we are trying our best for that.
Okay. I mean, I personally feel like you should have those names emblazoned on the top of your mind, particularly if you're running the pedestrian infrastructure group. There are 25 human lives that were taken.
Yes, right. Totally.
You remember the name of that guy who died? Whose community you went to?
Unfortunately, I don't, but not because I don't care about the person. It's because I'm bad with names.
Thank you, Sid, and thank you for your comments. I see next a phone number. It ends on 3061.
Yeah, it's Craig Pullman. Yeah, I have a couple comments and a couple questions. When you mentioned about the snow removal, I think that's very important. And I don't know if people know that there are ordinances out there that people can be fined. I do believe $500 a day for not having their snow plowed between. And you can call 311 and report the homeowner if they don't shovel their snow between certain hours. But one thing about snow is that they have to make sure that the crosswalks are cleared, especially on the curb cuts. And a lot of times with CTA at the bus stops, the city comes through and plows, but they leave a mound between the curb and trying to get on the bus, and that can be extremely hazardous. So CTA should have whoever cleans their bus shelters and stuff should be able to clear some of that snow where the buses, park to let people come on. One thing, Seth, I have to ask is, you mentioned all these safety projects and the things that you're doing. I did not once hear you mention accessible pedestrian signals in any of those locations. Are there going to be? And the second question is, where you have these parkways, the rest areas, whatever you call them, in the middle of the street, are they going to have truncated domes so that people who are blind or visually impaired can identify that they're in one of these rest islands?
Yes, by rest island, you mean the ones for the buses? Sorry, just asking for clarification.
Yeah, wherever I thought you were saying that one-way streets, and then you were having like a rest period, an island between there and crossing the next end of the street.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. You. That is correct. We usually call them pedestrian refuge islands. I understand. Thank you for the clarification. It does include ADA tiles. So the truncated domes that you mentioned. Yes. Those islands are supposed to be at least 6 feet wide. Ideally 8 feet wide. 8 feet is our minimum. And we make sure to include 2 feet of truncated domes on either side. And to your earlier question about EPS signals, yes, I can say that the department has made the policy for every signal that will be upgraded to include APS by default. Signal work is a little bit, like if concrete work was complicated, electrical work was even more complicated. Not to say that it's an excuse, but this is sort of the standard going forward, that every signal that will be upgraded, and almost, please don't quote me on this because signals is not my day-to-day thing, but almost between 100 to 50 signals are the department is aiming to upgrade every year.
Okay. Yeah, because the mayor promised, but it's been slow. That's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. I think next week I see, switching, Kyle Lucas.
Hey there. Thank you so much for taking my comment. I just wanted to circle back to sidewalk, snow, and ice clearance. I know that you brought up that there's a lot of different jurisdictions that come into play on who is who is responsible for clearing snow and ice off of sidewalks. The reality is that the system that we have right now doesn't work. It's a failed system, it's a failed policy, and it leaves people stranded in their homes. It means that people are falling and getting injured. There's a lot of people with disabilities who have a lot of trouble getting around because of the lack of snow and ice clearance on sidewalks and get stranded in their homes during that time. There is actually a growing support among the public and all the people for the city to make sidewalks and snow and ice removal a municipal service. So instead of depending on the majority of property owners to make it done, it's a city service just like clearing the streets. Is CDOT supportive of this initiative? And if it is, what strategies would CDOT use to ensure that there's a coordinated effort so that whoever agencies are responsible for the service aren't plowing each other in?
Oh, sorry, Vic, I saw you coming off muted.
Sure. Yeah. Hi.
Better
Kyle,
to
thank
answer
you for
that.
your question. Yeah, about the pushing. I'll start backwards first. Snow removal operations. Not an ops person, but I understand it's sometimes you're just pushing it back and forth, as people have said, because there isn't a lot of places for it to go. Every year CDOT we have a CDOT Streets and Sanitation Coordination meeting, particularly around bus stops and protected bike lanes, because CDOT does plow the protected bike lanes. And this year we're through the Chicago Works program trying to get basically roughly triple the bike maintenance, plow, sand, and sweep fleet. So we can have kind of a zone-based approach to doing those lanes and try to get in there so that streets and sand snow isn't coming right back in after we plow. Sometimes we get hit with like these multiple or continuous snow events where you may plow and then another inch or two fall and have to come plow again, so it doesn't look like it's cleared, but it's being plowed as the snow is coming down. As far as your question about a broader citywide, like a municipal program for clearing sidewalks, I'm aware that other cities, I grew up in Ottawa, very snowy place. They have that program. I think the department really looks at it kind of maybe to that public discourse and city council at this stage on that. I haven't myself, followed the issue as closely, but on the operational side, we try to work with streets and sand so that we're not just pushing snow back and forth from what we're clearing and what they're clearing.
Thanks for that. I just think that it's critically important that that this is something that gets done, because it is an accessibility issue. It's a public safety issue. And right now, everyone at every level of government is just passing the buck. It doesn't get done. And frankly, you also don't clear the bike lanes. So it's your responsibility if you don't do it. So we need our government to stop passing the buck around and take responsibility and actually serve its residents. So we would be very appreciative if the Chicago Department of Transportation is supportive in our effort to make sidewalk snow plowing a municipal service, and then in conjunction, make clearing the full public way an actual reality. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kyle. I see Patrick next.
Hello. I have a fairly long statement, but I in the interest of keeping it short, I'm working with a group of parents with the Portage Park LSC. We're concerned about pedestrian safety around the school. We are not in a Vision Zero area. We are leaning on the alderman to do a traffic study to essentially start the process of getting modern pedestrian infrastructure around the school and park that's adjacent. So in the interest of keeping this short, is there a way to get a review from CDOT to look at the area around the school? There's been a student that was seriously injured in a crash last year on Laramie. This is Portage Park Elementary. There's been a pedestrian death and a motorcyclist death within the last year at Irving Park and Long. I looked at city research, that city data. There's been 3,000 accidents in that CAPS beat area in the past 7 years. It's roughly about the same as the attendance area for the school. We have the usual pickup and drop off problems that a lot of schools have. So without being in a Vision Zero area, how do we kick off the process of getting updated infrastructure? There's TIF money. We are open to using data to apply for state grants. We don't expect the city to just fork over all the money to take care of it. CPS and the principal are interested in trying to help with some of the issues there. We have support. I don't know how to engage CDOT aside from petitioning the alderman to do a traffic study, which is, depends on the alderman. So is there a way to go about it without going through the alderman, or is there another way to opt into a Vision Zero project?
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll definitely, I'm looking at Sid, but that is something that our teams go out to and work with schools, and specifically with schools. That's definitely one of our priorities as department. So something that we can do, Patrick, right now, just so that I can coordinate with internally with our teams and make sure that we follow up with you. I'll just write down my email address in the chat, and also for everyone. As Vic mentioned at the beginning, I'm the new director of outreach and engagement, and I can support your petitions and also help coordinate internally. So I'll do that right now, so you can follow up with me directly, Patrick, and I'll just make sure to get you in touch with the right people.
Great, that's really helpful, and that's all I've got for this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Yes, and I think this is a perfect way in which how we want to collaborate in this spaces, find ways in which we can be useful as part of CDOT. We don't only just want to present the data, but we want you to be co-creators of that data and really working on those projects. So thanks, Patrick, for that opportunity. Brian, I see your hand next.
Hi, thanks for taking these comments and questions. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to limit it to, I think, one. I've been paying attention to a lot of sort of like street improvement projects around where I am, and there seems to be this prevailing attitude of we'd like to make it better for bikers and pedestrians, and we'll do whatever we can so long as we don't inconvenience cars too much. I don't know if that attitude is coming from project leaders, someone in CDOT, people in IDOT, aldermen, people who are just involved in some way. So I'd like to know sort of what CDOT's attitude is towards that, and that seems like the biggest problem in making things better. So like, what are you doing to combat that attitude?
Romina, I can offer a brief response, or I don't know if anyone else wants to offer that.
No, please, you started. Yeah. Go ahead, and then we can add to.
Cool. Thanks. Yes, as you mentioned, this is something I guess we should just say outright, is that we are all on the same team over here. We all want to improve pedestrian safety. That is that is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, because I love walking around this city, and I love walking around every part of the city, and I want everyone else to be walking around every part of the city and doing that safely. There are definitely issues we come into because of, the standards that we have set already, and those are, can't be something that we just cannot be like whimsical about it, if you ask me, to be honest. So what we are doing is we are working on new set of design guidelines that will inform exactly what sort of improvements could be done on a standard basis, and that sort of thing will set the stand. Right now, what we are doing is we are pushing the envelope little by little, doing various sort of pilot projects to exactly get everyone on board, because this is sort of the tension that I think is at the essence of the Chicago Mobility Collaborative, is that there is the need to do stuff really quickly. At the same time, there is the need to do it well. There is the need to make sure that everyone sort of at the city level is on board with what we are doing. So right now, we are making sure to do projects that push the envelope, and making sure that that is something that becomes standard later on. Sorry, Vig. Yeah.
No, so that's really great. I mean, I think this is a challenge. Myself also very passionate personally. This is why I'm interested in coming to work at CDOT, is the transformational aspect. At the same time, it's not just CDOT in the sense of, like, I think ever since the automobile was invented, we have been as a society facing this exact thing. Is like, I was once on a panel discussion where someone asked, is Chicago ready for autonomous cars? And the answer is, Chicago even ready for cars, right? Because the forces are bigger than the Department of Transportation, and the patterns of transportation are bigger than one street, right? We've now have a metropolitan system where someone's job is in Naperville, right? And there's no judgment there. It's just now people have established activity patterns. Now, how do you shift all of that back in toward a different way of emphasizing local trips, emphasizing community mobility, emphasizing safety? Right? We're trying to use the resources we have and the programs we have to put those tools into play. But I want it to be instantaneous too, but it is not a system that was created overnight. And so I think we're also looking at, what will make it go faster? There have been examples, I think, in some cities, Toronto, where I've spent some time growing up, where they went negative on bike lanes one year, which is really, to me, kind of something that motivated me to come into this field. It's like, how can you go negative in your mileage taking projects out? That, I think, evidence sort of like lack of maybe the social or cultural work that needs to happen to, like, how can a project go in and then go the other way? So it's complicated, and I think it extends back to what I was trying to say at the opening, beyond just this meeting or beyond the Department of Transportation, but it's those community bike rides. It is kitchen table conversations around traffic safety. I think it's tremendous that we have 30 people in this big room, 200 people tonight. And that's really big, I think, for an issue area to draw this many people. And yet we still have 2.7 million other people in Chicago who are getting around living their lives. So I think the collaborative piece is like, how do we get more and more and more people on board? And I think a lot of people are. I believe there's been a groundswell and a change where even in the last 2 years, folks really, yes, like safety has reached this tipping point. And I think that's evidenced in the conversation and in the comments that particularly as a quality of life issue, and folks seeing safety not just from a transportation point of view, but affecting other quality of life indicators, health disparities, and so on. So I think it will be an all angles kind of approach. There certainly is like this supremacy of the car in the culture that there's an element of challenging that, but I think also an element of like transportation safety and challenging that is bigger, right? You connect into affordable housing, connect into, as I said, health, connect into neighborliness, and those amplifying those narratives will also perhaps help with it's not just, let's say, anti-car, but it's like pro all those other great things, may bring more people into the broader tent.
I had a comment or a question. I don't know if people can hear me. Is it my hand's raised?
Yeah, Fatima, we do have a few other people with their hands raised before you. Can I just come back to you in a minute, just to allow other questions to come in? Thanks, Fatima, appreciate it. And I do see Carl next, and also before Carl goes, we do have about 4 more minutes or 3 more minutes before we going back into the main session.
So you've updated 1.7% of the intersections in Chicago this year, I guess, based on your numbers, 400 of the 22,600. I don't know how you tell us those numbers and think it's good. I mean, that's, just lives that are going to be lost. I got 2 questions. One is this this thing we've all been talking about, the Chicago Works Collaborative or whatever. I want to know how much that funding is compared to the rest of the CDOT budget. And as you all are here telling us how much you care about pedestrian safety, I want to know how much money you're spending on improving the driver experience versus how much money you're spending on improving the vulnerable pedestrian experience. Because my guess is the ratio is somewhere like the 1.7% of crosswalks that you improved this year. My second question is around 47th Ward, Matt Martin, Alderman, proposed an ordinance that would require all thoroughfares to be upgraded to safe street standards every time they're open for resurfacing. That would clear you of all of the aldermanic politics, blah, blah, blah. It would just happen automatically. And it is very clear that CDOT has opposed that and is working to water that down. I look at these things and I wonder, do you expect any of us to believe you? I guess that's the third question. Thanks.
Sure. I'll speak briefly to, I'm sort of taking a note here. I think there are a lot of questions like facts and information, budgeting. I saw some things in the chat around like six-way scramble intersections, pedestrian push buttons. I think a good forum to bring that information wouldn't be my trying to quote wrong facts right now, but like Romina and others are taking note of that, and we'll find a way to communicate back. Just briefly on budgeting, to give you an overview, to not send you away with nothing, the department's budget, it's not like one budget from one pipe, so to speak. To break it down, I'd say our money comes from the federal government, from the state government, and then locally. And then the fund, which is not that fun of spending other people's money, is the strings attached. So our federal and state monies come with, various programs, federal bridge program money, think from DC or, state of Illinois, this money. Then, so those all kind of have followed different formulas. Then there's the competitive programs, like I mentioned earlier, the RAISE program, where states and cities and other applying for based on merit or project criteria. So our budget from, you can call those formula monies from state and federal, are kind of.
Hello. Alrighty, we are coming back to the main session. I know that there were probably some conversations just cut short. So if you can just mute yourself again, just to be back as a large group, we appreciate it. And we'll just wait one more second. Alrighty, so the presentation's coming back in. We'll just wait a few more seconds as people come back to this. And while the PowerPoint goes back on the screen, again, for those who don't know me, my name is Romina Castillo. Also, if you missed the first part of this meeting where I was introduced, I am the new Director of Outreach and Engagement for CDOT. This is a brand new role and position at the department. And Vic mentioned I've been involved with what was before MBAC Impact in the past in different capacities. So I'm excited to be back and working and hoping to collaborate with a lot of you. So I see the screen going back in. We had a lot of conversations. Again, we apologize for the issues with the technology. We can't always trust Zoom, unfortunately, but thank you for your patience and bearing with us this evening. There was a lot of information that was shared with you. Again, the sessions or the breakout rooms were recorded, so that, and those will also be made available in the website. And that way, if you probably wanted to share from different people from different groups, and that was not possible today, so you can go back and listen to both the presentations and the conversations and the questions raised during that time. What we're doing as we regroup, we don't want to give you a full debrief of what was mentioned and discussed in each session. What we're going to do is we really want to just pull some of that information, some of those next steps, opportunities for all of you to be involved and continue learning about the projects and the work that we're doing at CDOT, but also to be a participant and an active citizen and help us, or an active Chicagoan, and really help us continue moving the projects forward. So we'll just allow each group to provide, again, a really quick kind of next steps and actions taking place in the next few days, weeks, and months, and also just give you an overview of what was discussed during those breakout rooms. So we're going to hear first from the pedestrian group. I'm sorry, from the bikeways. So that will be Dave and Brad.
Hey, Romina. Thanks, everyone. Yes, we had I thought a really good discussion in the bike group, in the bike breakout group, talking about some initiatives that have been underway over the last year or two, but then also looking ahead and really talking through, how we prioritize not only locations, but implementation strategies, and even within, a general corridor where to focus our efforts. So there's a lot of discussion around intersection safety and safety in general is really the common theme. And a lot of discussion and points brought up about neighborhood greenways as well as really being a critical part of or foundation of the bike network along with protected bike lanes. A couple things that I'll plug for everyone. The city's website, chicago.gov/bikes. Maybe someone can put that in the chat. We have updated the website in the last couple of months, but just want to point that out. We're going to continue to update the website to provide updates on projects and more information on initiatives. There's a bike map, like an interactive Google Bike Maps, that we're updating every month so that people can see how the network is changing. And there's a list of projects that are and their status from both 2021 and 2022. I talked about in our group the Chicago Community Cycling Network update. It's a document that we released last year, is posted on the website. We'll be updating that again at the end of this year, and that will really document strategic initiatives around biking for the next year. And we want to incorporate, a lot of the feedback that we heard today. The last thing I'll plug real quick, October 16th, the Open Boulevard program, where we shut down streets to motor vehicle traffic and really activate the streets with community partners, allow people to walk and bike in the street. October 16th, we'll be doing this on Douglas Boulevard in the North Lawndale community. And that will be between Central Park on the east and on Douglas Boulevard up to Independence up to 13th Street, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Great, thank you, Dave. Next on the list, we have the pedestrian team.
Thanks, Romina, and thank you everyone who was in the pedestrian projects breakout group. We had a very superb discussion and really appreciate everyone's comments and involvement in the discussion. I'll just begin with a brief overview of what we talked about. We talked about how we are strategizing locations for doing pedestrian safety improvements, how we are spending the limited resources we have through the resources that we have got for the first time through the Chicago Works program, how we are prioritizing that in the areas which have been identified as Vision Zero high crash community areas, and how we are using information from data, but also lived experiences of people, building partnerships with institutions and creating pedestrian safety infrastructure around those institutions. We also talked a little bit about how we are using data to inform projects, such as the pilot project of left-hand traffic calming. Lastly, as Dave mentioned a few things on the horizon, I'll also mention a few things. The Vision Zero Southside community planning effort is wrapping up. So we have 2 workshops coming up. One is the Cottage Grove Safety Workshop on October 15th, and another one is the 59th Street Safety Workshops on October 16th. If you would like to be involved in either of these workshops, please email Romina or anyone at CDOT, and we will make sure to kind of send you more information. There's also World Day of Remembrance coming up on November 20th, and we will be participating in the World Day of Remembrance. And something broader to look forward to is release of the Vision Zero action plans for the Northwest side and the South side. The Northwest side should happen sometime towards the end of this year, and the South side Vision Zero action plan should be released next year.
Will this plan be binding?
The Vision Zero action plans are definitely definitely helps set up the foundation for building projects similar to something that we have done on the West side. We talked a little bit about those projects in the Vision Zero in the breakout session.
Is that just a way of saying no?
I would mention one more thing is there was a lot of discussion about snow clearance in the breakout session, and I want to acknowledge that for the whole group.
So it won't be binding.
Scott,
Definitely
Scott.
not be binding.
Okay, let's move on. Please stop interrupting them. The Vision Zero plans have set the foundation for how we're investing a number of pedestrian infrastructure improvements, which is what he had said, but let's move on.
Thank you, Sid, and thanks, Scott, for that comment. I'll write my email down, and again, people can get in touch with me after this. Next, we have Better Streets for Buses.
Hey, thanks. We had some really great discussion and insightful questions as well. So I'd give an overview of a lot of the initiatives that we have been doing the past couple of years and looking ahead into the future as well. Some of them, they were generally spot type treatments, at pinch points along really high ridership corridors. And then we also went over the Better Streets for Buses program, which is a kind of a framework of bus priority streets, that looking ahead and longer term can be pointed to for implementing such treatments. One thing that I heard several times from our group discussion is that people want to see bigger and more impactful type bus priority, such as bus rapid transit, not just these little pinch point things. I think we all acknowledge that it's a bigger lift. It's harder, from a financial standpoint, politically and otherwise. But in trying to steer the conversation towards, how do we get the support for this? What are we doing? I think a couple of people made a good point that we need to build something, robust to show as an example and point to. We have LoopLink now, which is partially there, and I think that's served that purpose well. But that there's opportunity to do, even bigger and even more. We're in good discussion and got cut off. So I guess what we are still sorting through and trying to work out is how do we educate local communities, local elected officials, and achieve this support, because it sounds like it's there talking to everybody, but it's hard to break through and actually get the design done and shovels in the ground. So that's what we want to get out of this group. I think it's great just to see this enthusiasm for transit and other modes as well. So I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in from there.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I think just for the sake of time, we're going to allow the last group, the engagement and education programs, to provide next steps and a quick debrief.
Thanks so much, Romina. We had a very small group, but we are very grateful to Melanie, Nicholas, and Matthew who participated and provided some comments and questions. We don't have a lot of new upcoming things at the moment because we're wrapping up the end of the engagement season, but we are preparing to buckle down for the winter and plan to expand our program by adding more full-time staff. We are very interested in opportunities within your communities where the SAFE ambassadors can participate, can have a presence, can go to pop-ups, to health fairs, to any place where people are doing the good work of improving, health and well-being and safety in your communities. So please reach out to us about that. In addition to that, one thing we're particularly interested in is partnering with any organizations or community groups that have a youth focus in your community area. That is something that will be very valuable to us for building our junior ambassador program, providing more opportunities for peer-to-peer learning and young people to be able to grasp, the power of active transportation and be able to use active mobility as a way to explore their worlds as they move on here in Chicago. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Romina because I know we're just about at time. So thank you, everybody. And of course, you'll be able to watch the video of our session and all the videos of the breakout sessions when we post them online on our site.
Alrighty, thank you. Thanks, Amanda. I know we are on time and we just have some closing remarks. I know the commissioner, she was able to stay the whole time. So I'll just pass it over to her.
Sure thing. No, so thank you, everybody. I mean, they were all super interesting discussions. I know there was a lot in the chat, so we also kept a copy of the chat. So we've got all those comments too. It's just super helpful to hear the different perspectives on things that we think we're doing and maybe we're not, or things that we know we could do better, or things that sharing new information with folks like you who are very interested in making our city better. We, again, thank you for your time.
Hello,
And,
Commissioner.
Romina, who you've just heard from.
Ajay, what did you learn in Paris?
I'm sorry, what?
What did you learn in Paris? Tell us about what you learned in Paris.
Scott, before that,
well,
hello, Commissioner. This is Alex Wilson from
Hi.
West Palm Bikes. And hey, can we get some other planners in on these meetings? We're hearing from the bike ped and transit planners who are all advocates of this, but I would like to hear from the car planners who are so much of this conversation, but their voice is missing from this discussion. And can some of the planners at CDOT be part of this meeting who aren't just the bike ped and transit planners? I would like to hear from the car planners. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, so let's kind of be respectful to everybody who spent a lot of time, given a lot of comments here. Thank you for that. We continue to try to make this as productive as possible and create a really big tent. So, I think I want to appreciate that CTA came out today to help us. I heard in some of the meetings, we want to hear from IDOT and others, and you want other perspectives, folks who are thinking about what is the role of vehicles in the roadway. So we can open that up too. And, to Scott's question, who seems to love to interrupt, one of the things that, I did get a chance to go to Paris and to London, and I've been to Copenhagen, I've been to Tokyo, I've been all around the world. And we had a really great conversation with folks in Paris about some of the challenges and opportunities that they've been seeing, where they have opportunities to create dedicated bike lane, dedicated bus lane, diminish the car lanes. There are really some good principles behind what they're doing that we'd like to see applied here. So we learned a ton, brought it all back, and we hope that this is also a forum where we can share what everybody is learning, because there's a lot of power on this call. It's not just CDOT and CTA, it's all of you together, a lot of community-based organizations that are really getting the work done. So I encourage you to participate in as many opportunities as you see. We're going to try and do a better job of posting some of the events that you heard about. Come on out, see the projects. And we also did hear that people want to meet more. We are meeting and in community conversations about every day of the week. This is sort of the pull back and look at everything going on, but I think it's a critique well taken that we should find more opportunities for folks on this call to talk with each other. And we'd like to do it in person. We're here on video tonight. It's one way to enable a lot of people to get engaged, but we also would like to be in neighborhoods. We'd like to figure out more ways to advance the conversation. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. It's very much appreciated, and we'll be back with more, and have a great night. So thank you.
Thank you.